as always. We are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in Burbank, California. Right in the middle of Stormageddon 2014. It is really raining. I've got a lemon tree in my backyard that has fallen over. Soft soil. It's not the wind. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I am your host, Jimmy Church. Let's get this show cracking, everybody. You know how I start off every show. Started off with a salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world that are fighting the good fight. Courageously. Protecting our freedoms and the right for me to speak right now. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us, and you can't hear me. Think about it. Let's get this show on the road. Happy birthday to guitarist Adrian Smith of Iron Maiden. You know, I'm kind of like that heavy metal late night guy, aren't I? It's turning into that. But I loves my Iron Maiden. Adrian Smith, 57 years old. An actor, comedian, one of my favorites all time, always makes me laugh. Howard Hessman is 74 years old. Wow. He's starting to look it, but he didn't about 5 years ago. He's still looking pretty good. Our dead guy birthday today, one of my heroes, another one, Dexter Gordon, saxophonist, born in 1923. And if you're too young to know who Dexter Gordon is, you need to get that mad respect going and go and watch the movie Round Midnight. Write that down, Round Midnight. Dexter Gordon, 1923. Just an amazing talent. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Everything is Fade to Black, J Church Radio, at J Church Radio, Jimmy Church Radio, jimmychurchradio.com, Fade to Black, KJCR. Go and like, follow, subscribe, friend. You know what to do. Tonight, we've got a great show. It's kind of like a two-parter. We're going to have Bill Burns back in to finish where we left off last week. Bill is a friend, a stablemate here at Dark Matter Radio. And we both thought last week we ended it a little short. So I just had to get my Bill Burns on and get him back on the show. So he said, you know what, Jimmy? I'll help you out. I said, thank you, Bill. So we'll have Bill on in the first segment, and then we're going to jump straight over to Carrie Cassidy of Project Camelot. So we do have a busy show tonight. Very excited about Carrie Cassidy. Very excited. Very intelligent woman. And as always, email throughout the show, jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. And I want to get a couple of comments in before I get to Bill, who is actually standing by right now backstage, eagerly waiting to jump in. But I got a bunch of email last night on two different subjects. One was John B. Wells. I was kind of shocked. And the John B. Wells, so I just want to comment really quick. I'm not going to read any of the email. I'm just going to say this. I'm a John B. Wells fan. I'm disappointed in his departure, however it happened. That's my point. John B. Wells could have saved C2C. And that was my point and my statements last night. And that's it. I'm sticking to my guns. Also, got a bunch of email about us switching to 3 days. Well, we're not switching. We just did 4 days last week. The quality of this show and the quality of Dark Matter Radio Network is what is paramount with myself and Keith Rowland. And I'm speaking for Keith right now. Keith is listening, and I'll probably get a text. The quality of this show is paramount. And if we don't hang with the quality of the show, it's best that we just stay 3 days. That's it. It's not that big of a deal. When we expand the staff here, which will be shortly, hopefully within the month, and we do that, or when we're ready, then we'll switch to 4 days. I just want everybody to understand 3 days is a 7-day work week. It's not easy. It's fun, but it's not easy. And it's a 20-hour-a-day work day. And after I get done with the show here, you have to remember, I've been up since 7 or 8 o'clock this morning working. We do the show at 7 at night. I'm not done until 10, and I turn around and get it all. I do it all over again the next day. Nobody's complaining. I'm very happy. But when you move that to 4 days a week, there's not enough time in the day to deliver the product, the show that Keith and I demand. Are we clear? I would love to go 8 days a week. We just can't. There's not enough of us to get it all done. And that's it. So I hope that answers everybody's questions. Thank you for the email. Thank you for the support. And, some are disappointed, some understand. But, when we'll jump to 4 days. Oh, I did get an email, and then I'm going to jump straight to Bill. I got an email, and I did forward it over to the network that said, hey, Jimmy, how about you go 3 days, Art goes 4? That would be cool. Yeah, that's a good idea. I could dig that. That sounds really cool, actually. So don't think I don't read it, okay? So there you go. All right, so let's jump over to Bill. I'm going to bring Bill straight in. Everybody knows Bill Burns, UFO Hunters, UFO Files, the day after Roswell, Colonel Corso, and, of course, his show here with DMRN with his wife, Nancy. I'm just going to bring in the fader right now. Bill, are you with us?
I am with you.
Hey, see, standing backstage, you get to see and hear how we get this thing launched. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You have my kudos.
It's so much fun. It is just, and so tonight, it's a packed show. I didn't read any news. I didn't get to anything. I just wanted to get straight to you, and I hope you appreciate the abbreviated intro and all of that. Just go with me because I know that you and I like to talk a lot, and I just want to get as much as we can in the next half hour, 40 minutes. And,
folks have been asking me because they hear all the stories of the rain in California, and nobody realizes that in Southern California, there are these 2 months of the rainy season, sometimes 3 months of the rainy season. And boy, does it rain. And people think, oh, it's always desert, it's always this. And I keep saying, no. For 2 to 3 months of the year, there is a deluge in Southern California. And I've been there when it rained just about for 30 days straight. It is amazing.
Yeah.
And you guys are in that now, and all I can say is it's better than snow.
Well, that is true. And actually, what's really strange is, and if you live here long enough, then you'll also appreciate there are some seasons where it doesn't rain at all. And I remember when I first moved here from California, or moved here from Indianapolis, we were in like this 7-year drought. It was some kind of crazy thing. It hadn't rained a drop. And so I thought, okay, I moved to Pasadena, and I'm not going to buy a car. I'm just going to buy a bike, and I'm going to ride to work. The next day, it rained for like 3 months.
I mean, that's amazing. We moved
out, it rained every day.
We moved out to our boat. We were living in Venice, and decided, boy, I really, the boat experience is really great. It's nice. It's warm. So we bring our boat down from the Channel Islands, and for the first few, this was in November, and by the end of December, the rain was so intense. So we're living under a tarpaulin, right? And so to go to the bathroom on the dock, you have to get out, unzip the tarpaulin, climb down the steps, pouring rain, go to the bathroom, come back, try to dry off. And it was so damp. And we're saying, what human beings live like this?
Right. And that song, It Never Rains in California. Well, okay, that's all great. And for 9, 10 months out of the year, it is completely dry. Sometimes during rainy season, it'll only rain. Like this year, we've only had a couple of days of rain. That's it. A couple of days of rain. Last winter here, were you still living here last winter, a year ago?
No, we moved. No, we came back here. We came back here in late 2006.
Oh, okay.
And then when we got the pilot order for UFO hunters, that was at the end of that we moved back. We came, and then we moved back in the spring. Got the pilot order late in the winter. Moved back, and then by 2007. I was on the road and Nancy was on the boat. So for that whole first season of UFO Hunters, when we were traveling, Nancy was on the boat. During the break for the second season, then we moved back to New Jersey permanently, and I would travel back and forth from New Jersey.
Well, last winter here, it rained for 3 months. It was just cold, wet, and rain, which I love. I mean, because we don't get enough rain, but but this is the point. So now, because everything is so dry all the time, when it does rain, the water runs off of everything. It doesn't soak into anything. All of the drains are full of garbage. All the sewers are full of leaves and dirt and trash for the entire year. So everything backs up, and that includes the roofs of houses as well as the streets, and everything floods. And, that's why it's panic time here, because it's all the oil washes off of the streets. So you have all the car accidents on the freeways.
Right.
So that's what we go through here. And when we say Stormageddon, it's just because suddenly everybody forgets how to drive. There's flooding in the streets, and it's just chaos. It is hilarious what we go through when this happens, and it's a real phenomenon. Back in the Midwest, when it snows, everybody knows how to deal with it. Everybody knows how to drive. It's crazy, and you come out here, and it's like everybody has forgotten how to drive, and it's just bumper cars. It's crazy.
And the worst part of it is that in addition to all the problems, as all the oil rises to the road surface, is that my experience is that California houses don't have rain roofs. They've got roofs, but it's like nobody knows how to do a roof in California. We had this house. I'm serious. We might as well have been living under a sprinkler system every time it rained.
Oh man. Okay, let's get into it. Let's get into the thick stuff here really quick. We were talking earlier this week, and then earlier today about Dr. Feelgood. Now, so as quickly as we can, let's because we're going to talk about we're going to tell the story, but who is Dr. Feelgood? Let's just start there for everybody, and then let's get into this mad, crazy tale, because it is about as nuts. Now, I'll say this. I'm old enough to remember Dr. Feelgood, the stories, the phenomena that went down in Manhattan. And I mean, it was everywhere. It was Time Magazine. It was just a constant thing in the early to mid 70s. But so let's just start there. Dr. Feelgood. Who is he? Who was he?
Dr. Feelgood was a German immigrant. He was a medical doctor, a German immigrant named Max Jacobson, who came to the United States in the 1940s. And he was the person who developed the drug methamphetamine. He synthesized the drug methamphetamine, and he brought that to the United States in the late 1940s after this tour of Europe. I mean, he lived in Vienna, he lived in Prague, he lived in Paris, but once in the United States, he had this clientele of movie stars and literati and all the famous artists. And gradually, he began to expand his reach into show business. And in 1960, a young Senator John F. Kennedy, in the midst of his campaign with Richard Nixon, became his patient and began receiving methamphetamine injections. And that brought him into the world of politics and Washington. And he began treating Harry Truman, began treating Spiro Agnew, and Richard Nixon wanted him to treat him. So he was this very, very powerful doctor.
Okay, that's a broad stroke of the pen and a very, very bold statement. So let me back up and sit right there for a second. The meth epidemic that this country is in right now is his fault? I mean, are you saying that when you say he synthesized methamphetamine, this is the character that started it all? The problem that we have today, he created it. Is that
That's correct?
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, and then let's back up again to what you just said. So you're saying that, and there's documented proof, I'm assuming, for you to make that statement, that John F. Kennedy took methamphetamine injections from Dr. Feelgood. I want to make this perfectly clear because you ran right past it, and that hit me like an ice pick in the forehead. So let's just stay right there for a second. He injected John F. Kennedy or in the early 60s with methamphetamines.
He injected John F. Kennedy in 1960 during his presidential campaign against Richard Nixon with methamphetamines because Kennedy was brought to Jacobson by his old college roommate, Chuck Spaulding from Harvard. Spaulding was a patient of Dr. Jacobson's. And Kennedy in 1960 was absolutely weak. He could barely walk. Remember, he had Addison's disease, and that was a fatal disease.
Right.
He was losing his voice, and he was totally fatigued. Nixon was ahead in the polls. Despite his vigor, Nixon was ahead in the polls. And Kennedy was getting sick. He had lost his voice. He needed a lift. And so Spaulding brought him to Max Jacobson in secret. Jacobson gave him one shot, and Kennedy just almost flew out of the office because it was so powerful. And then again, right before the first debate with Richard Nixon, the pivotal first debate, Kennedy had totally lost his voice. He could barely walk. Kennedy walked on crutches when nobody was watching anyway. That was how bad his back was. Dr. Jacobson gave John F. Kennedy an injection straight into his voice box. And we all know what happened in that first debate with Richard Nixon. The polls shifted, never changed.
Right. Okay, so now as far as Jacobson's Dr. Feelgood, and it reminds me, I just want to say Dr. Strange Glove too, as a matter of fact. Was he in Germany? Was he affiliated with the Nazi Party? Did he pump any Third Reich people with methamphetamine? You know, what's his history before he got to the United States?
His history was he was a German Jew, and he was practicing medicine in Germany. He had synthesized methamphetamines in an injectable form in Germany and was treating multiple sclerosis patients. And his reputation in Berlin began to grow. And when the brown shirts came to power, in the early 1930s, Jacobson was on a list of people they wanted to shut down. Well, one day this brown shirt knocks on his door, comes into his office, and Jacobson says to this brown shirt, "Look, you shouldn't be here. I'm Jewish. If somebody finds out you're here, you're going to be in trouble." The brown shirt says to him, "I have gonorrhea. And if they find out in the Nazi Party that I have gonorrhea, they will throw me out of the Hitler Youth Organization, and I'm going to be thrown out of the party. Can you treat me?" So Jacobson treats this guy for gonorrhea. A couple of days later, the guy comes back and says, "You saved me. Now I'm going to save you. They're coming for you. Get out of Germany. They are coming for you." And Jacobson left the very next day. But before he did, the Nazis came and they took all of his formula for methamphetamines. They were the ones, they put that into pill form. And one of the earliest patients, besides all the pilots and all the soldiers, one of the earliest patients for methamphetamines in Germany, Jacobson's formula, was Adolf Hitler, who was high on meth throughout the entire World War.
And that was the rumor. Now, how did he get out of Germany and to the United States? I mean,
well, what he did was he left Germany. His wife's family lived in Prague, so they went to Czechoslovakia. But he didn't have a medical license to practice in Prague, so then they went to Vienna. It was in Vienna that Jacobson was turned into an operative by Soviet intelligence. So here's this guy, he's a Soviet operative, he's practicing in Vienna. Then he developed this device for sterilizing needles. And he went to Paris to show that device off. And the device became so popular and people flocked to him. He wired his wife in Prague and said, bring the children to Paris. This is where we're living. He stayed in Paris and he was treating people like Anais Nin and Henry Miller and Billy Wilder and all these famous people. And finally, right before the war broke out, they fled to the United States, and he set up his practice in New York on the Upper East Side.
So when you say Soviet operative, what was he doing for the Soviet Union at that time? Was he passing intelligence? Was he advising? Was it on a medical capacity? What did he do for the Soviets?
He was a listening post for the Soviets because they knew that at some point the Germans, which they did, they would invade Austria and occupy all of Austria and Vienna. So they needed a listening post in Vienna, and it was there that Jacobson became that listening post. And then when he left for Paris, he was still a listening post. And even in the United States, there were all these communist agents flocking to his office. And I know that because I pulled Max Jacobson's FBI file. And in the FBI file, that's exactly what it says.
So they were, okay, so in 1960, and it was funny. It's funny because I was just talking about this very subject last night in another capacity, but 1960 is only 15 years, after 1945. It's not that big of a deal. It's a blink of an eye. Well, in 1960, was the Kennedy administration aware of Jacobson's past, his affiliation with the Soviets? What I mean is this: the FBI's file says that now, but in 1960, what were they aware of on his background?
The Kennedy administration, were not aware. But J. Edgar Hoover was aware because when he came into this country, Hoover knew that he'd had communist contacts. And so Hoover had Max Jacobson under surveillance as early as the 1950s. So he knew, but he liked the fact that Jacobson, because of his relationships with Hollywood studios, with Cecil B. DeMille, with Charlton Heston, with all these movie stars and Eddie Cantor and Eddie Fisher, because of his relationship with all the stars, Hoover could keep tabs on what they were doing and their drug habits because he was having Jacobson followed. But what Hoover didn't know was that by 1960, there was another person in the mix. That person was a photographer named Mark Shaw. Mark Shaw was the guy who was doing all those fashion shots of Audrey Hepburn in the 1950s.
Right.
He became the Kennedy family photographer. Mark Shaw in World War II was in the OSS. After the war, he became a non-official cover officer for the CIA. So you had this crazy musical chairs. You had Jacobson treating the president, and Jacobson was, at this point, a Soviet operative. You had Mark Shaw photographing the president, who was Jacobson's patient, but who was a CIA cover officer watching Max Jacobson.
Was his connection with the Soviet Union continuous throughout the 50s, all the way up to the Kennedy administration and election?
Yes, and it was so continuous that the week before Jacobson accompanied Kennedy to the Vienna summit with Khrushchev in 1961, the KGB went through his office and rifled all of his files on President Kennedy. So at that meeting in Vienna, where Jacobson was in an anteroom while Kennedy was meeting Khrushchev, Khrushchev knew that Kennedy was being injected with heavy doses of methamphetamine by Max Jacobson, his own operative.
Were the drugs for Kennedy not to? Okay, obviously we're right in the middle of the Cold War. There's so many facets of this now that you have to take into account. But the obvious is this: were the drugs that important to Kennedy that he was willing to turn a blind eye on Jacobson? And why didn't or did Hoover turn a blind eye to the whole thing? Because Hoover would have taken anybody to task. That was his hobby. So why did everybody ignore what was going on? Was it just because of the drugs?
Yes, Kennedy knew what was in the drugs because Bobby Kennedy stole one of the vials and had it analyzed by the FBI. So when Bobby Kennedy went to his brother and said, "Don't you know what this guy's shooting into you?" Kennedy said to his brother, "I don't care if it's horse piss. It made me feel good." That was Kennedy's response. And in Vienna, because Khrushchev knew that Kennedy was living on methamphetamines. He was thriving on methamphetamines. Khrushchev juggled the schedule. He showed up late because he figured that Kennedy would be coming down from a methamphetamine high, because methamphetamine gives you bipolar symptoms, that Kennedy would be coming down. Kennedy ran into Jacobson, got an extra shot, an extra dose. He became almost semi-stuporous when he went back into the meeting with Khrushchev. He was so incompetent in that meeting, stumbling over his words. He couldn't stand up. He was slurring his words. Khrushchev thought, "I've really got this guy. I'm going to roll him over." And that's when he beat the crap out of Kennedy in that meeting in Vienna, threatening a world war, saying he was going to march into Berlin. Kennedy better get the troops out because Khrushchev was taking over. So Kennedy leaves that meeting. And back in Berlin, he says to Scotty Reston of the New York Times, "This was the worst day of my life. Khrushchev beat me up. He treated me like a child." And sure enough, in 1962, Khrushchev puts his guided missiles in Cuba, and we almost go to war. And Jacobson was partly responsible for Kennedy's response to Khrushchev in Vienna, and the CIA knew it and knew they had a real problem on their hands.
How? Okay, I've just got to ask the obvious. How come this news now? Why didn't we know about any of this in the past? And what you're insinuating is when we were on the brink of nuclear war, and we were right there, we were seconds away from madness, we had a hallucinating meth head sitting in the White House dealing with this. Is that what you are saying?
Absolutely. But here's what Kennedy knew. This is where it gets really fascinating. And I have to thank Dick Morris for this piece of information. One of the things that nobody knew was that the Soviet Union did not have an intercontinental ballistic missile. They had intermediate range ballistic missiles, but no intercontinental missile. They had intercontinental bombers, but no missiles. So we had the edge over them in ICBMs. Khrushchev told the Supreme Soviet that they did have ICBMs. He lied to his own Supreme Soviet. So since Kennedy knew that, and Kennedy knew that his big bargaining chip were our own missiles, 1950s version obsolete missiles in Turkey.
Right.
Kennedy knew, and he played this card. Kennedy knew that if he faced off Khrushchev, Khrushchev would have to back down, because even though a bomber fleet might come over, Kennedy still had the upper hand with guided missiles. And that's exactly what happened. Khrushchev backed down by turning his fleet around, his navy around in Cuba. I spoke to one of our fighter pilots who was flying the Great Circle route over the Bering Straits in 1962. His name was George Merritt. He was one of the guests on UFO Hunters. And he told me that we had interceptors flying over the northwestern United States, over Canada, over Alaska, carrying nuclear air-to-air missiles. And they were waiting for the Soviet bombers to come across. They never did, because Khrushchev had backed down. And that was why Khrushchev was overthrown after the Cuban Missile Crisis, because his Supreme Soviet realized that Khrushchev was playing cards with an empty hand.
Was Dr. Feelgood, was Jacobson, did he run like, was he protected in some way? Did he feel like he could do whatever he wanted to do. And at that time, was methamphetamine even a scheduled drug? Was it illegal? I don't know.
No, it was
1962. I have no
it
idea.
was perfectly legal. It was made illegal as a result of the drug war in the 1970s. But methamphetamine was a legal drug. It was distributed all over Europe. In fact, our own troops were given methamphetamine during World War II because that was how they stayed awake on some of these long marches. And our pilots took methamphetamines. Our bomber pilots took them when they were flying the B-17 pilots flying from England to Germany to bomb the German factories.
Well,
so this was a perfectly legal drug.
Well, I understand the innocence of it because I didn't know the damages that it could cause. But if you need, and I'm speaking for the Japanese, United States, or whoever, you need somebody to stand on their post for 20 hours on guard duty. You had to do what you had to do to get it done. I understand all of that. But how he could then, for the next 20 years, all the way through the Kennedy administration, and then what he ended up doing to Manhattan, throughout the late 60s and into the early 70s, how nobody, shut this guy down, found him out. And here we are talking about it today in 2014, and it's like breaking news. I mean, for everybody. Anybody listening to this show right now has probably never heard this story. And it's incredible.
Exactly. It is an incredible story because it's the story of at least when I was doing the book, because I wasn't really out to do this great expose on Kennedy. What I was out to do, what Rick Lertzman and I, who was my co-author in the book, were out to do was to tell a story of how a drug, because the bottom line is that Jacobson, in developing this strain of methamphetamines, was self-injecting. So all the hyper-grandiosity, hypersexuality, all of those psychological, those psychiatric problems that resulted from the drug, Jacobson experienced. So it's as if the drug, through Jacobson, as if it were a life form. I know this sounds weird, but it was the drug through Jacobson that literally spread through most of Hollywood, through most of the world of entertainment, to Kennedy, to the Rat Pack, because Sinatra, Dean Martin, Joey Bishop, they were all, Peter Lawford, they were all addicted through Jacobson to the mob. Sam Giancana became an addict. Judith Exner Campbell became an addict. And Jacobson was in such a frenzy about this that he was even chasing Sam Giancana's girlfriend, Phyllis McGuire, through the Ed Sullivan Show, trying to get a needle into her before she went on with the rest of the sisters to sing the song. That's how crazed Jacobson was.
What about Jackie Kennedy? What's the
Absolutely. She was after the inauguration. The Kennedys went to the Winter White House for a little vacation. Jackie Kennedy had a severe migraine. She could not get out of bed. So Kennedy flew Jacobson down to Miami to the Winter White House in West Palm Beach, where he gave Jackie her first injection, and that turned Jackie into a heavy user of methamphetamines, to the point where even after JFK died and she'd married Aristotle Onassis and then divorced Aristotle Onassis, she was still on methamphetamines. And in fact, when Jacobson's license was going to be revoked by New York State, she was the one who brought Louis Nizer in to defend Jacobson before the Board of Regents.
I have here, and I've read the book 3 times, I think, Aristotle's biography. And I would say that book probably, as well it should be, 50% of the book or more is about Jackie. Not one mention of drug use. There's nothing there. It's pretty complete. And I'm a little shocked right now at the thought of Jackie O, and the thought that the White House was a 24-hour meth party, apparently. And
it was a meth party and an LSD party and a marijuana party. It was all of that. Kennedy was indulging in drugs. The person who brought drugs to the White House, in addition to Max Jacobson, was this person called Mary Pinchot Meyer. Her ex-husband, Cord Meyer, was a CIA agent, and Mary Pinchot was Kennedy's mistress. They knew each other from Harvard. Mary Pinchot was bringing LSD to the White House supplied by Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary had developed LSD under the auspice of the CIA because it was used in the early 1950s for the purposes of mind control, and Timothy Leary was a part of that.
And Charlton Heston, really?
Oh, this
the Omega
story.
Man?
Great story. Well, Moses, it's this great story. Cecil B. DeMille was flagging. His energy was gone while he was filming the Ten Commandments in Egypt. So he flew Max Jacobson to Egypt to be the doctor on set whose sole purpose was to keep Cecil B. DeMille heavily injected with methamphetamine. When they're shooting the great Ten Commandments scene on the mountain, DeMille thought that Heston didn't have enough energy for that scene. I mean, after all, look what he's getting, right? The Ten Commandments. He wanted him to be over the top. So he said to Jacobson, give him a one good shot. And Jacobson injected Charlton Heston with methamphetamines, and then they shot the final scene where he receives the Ten Commandments. So Moses was high on methamphetamines for that scene.
Did he ever get over? I'm just right now. I'm very rarely at a loss for words. You've got me. Did Charlton Heston, was it also a lifelong addiction?
No, he only took it once. He said that he was so crazy that he would never do it again. The other person who got crazed on methamphetamines and said he never wanted to do it again was Elvis Presley, also a Jacobson patient, because Colonel Parker, not a colonel, not an American, Colonel Parker was a Max Jacobson regular patient.
Where was so Jacobson was based out of Manhattan? Was his office there?
Yes.
And what what kind of line went out the door? I mean, it must have been a who's who of who's who. That waiting room. I can't imagine Dean, Frank, Joey Bishop, Peter. You said Peter Lawford too, as well.
Peter Lawford, and all these great writers: Truman Capote,
right?
Paddy Chayefsky. I mean, all these great writers, Tennessee Williams, and they all wrote about Jacobson. Tennessee Williams wrote that he'd be flagging. He'd go to Jacobson's office. He'd get the shot. He'd go out flying. He'd be up for like 3 days, and then he'd crash, and he'd come back into Jacobson's office. Alan J. Lerner, same thing. Jacobson would have parties at his office. It became a literary salon in the 1960s, where you'd see all these phenomenal literati, New York's literary elite, in his office, and these actors would be in the office, and they'd be partying. They'd be partying because every few hours Jacobson would make the rounds of all these people with his needle, giving them methamphetamine shots. That was what his office was like.
What happened to Jacobson? We have 4 minutes. What ended up happening to him? Did he die peacefully, or?
Well, he died peacefully, but in the very early 1970s, these two reporters from the New York Times spotted Spiro Agnew leaving Jacobson's office. They
Come
said,
on.
This is crazy.
So
man. They figured out who Jacobson was. They went to interview him. Jacobson thought that finally the great legend of the work he'd done was about to go out to the world. The Times was interviewing him. In reality, they were doing an expose. They did this expose on him in the New York Times. A young Geraldo Rivera working at ABC News picks up the story and went on a crusade against Jacobson. Don Imus picked up the story from Geraldo and went on a crusade against Jacobson. So by 1972, all of New York was aiming at Jacobson, such that Louis Lefkowitz, afraid that Spiro Agnew and Republican Party politicians would be caught up, went to the Times and told them to shut it down. The Times backed off. That's when the Watergate story broke, and the Times said, we want our own scandal. And they renewed the scandal that brought Jacobson to the attention of the New York State Board of Regents. They yanked his license, and by the late 70s, Jacobson just quietly passed away.
Incredible. Now, was he manufactured this entire time through the early 70s? He had a meth lab somewhere?
Yes, he had.
God.
He had a corporation out on Long Island, and guess who was his partner in that corporation?
Oh,
Prince Stash Radziwill, Jack Kennedy's brother-in-law.
You've got to be joking. Seriously.
Because I'm serious.
Man.
That's what it was, because Stash was also, we have photographs, they're in the book Dr. Feelgood, of Max Jacobson injecting Stash Radziwill with methamphetamines, injecting Kennedy with methamphetamines on the 50-mile hike they did across Florida.
I don't know what to say. I really don't. And now here we go, Bill. What, am I going to have you on again next week to finish up with this too as well? I mean, that is one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard. And
exactly. It is phenomenal. And we didn't get to it because of Kennedy. We got to it because of one of my favorite actors, Bob Cummings, because Bob Cummings' life was destroyed by Max Jacobson. And I got to Bob Cummings through one of my former clients when I was out in California, Dwayne Hickman, Dobie Gillis, and Chuck on Love That Bob. Because he worked for my godfather, because my godfather produced Love That Bob, and that was the connection between me and Dwayne Hickman.
Did you ever Did you ever meet Jacobson?
I never met Jacobson. I have his memoirs. That's how we got so much of the story, from Jacobson's own diary that he kept, and from interviewing a lot of the people who were his patients, like Julie Newmar from Catwoman. Julie Newmar told us the story of how Bob Cummings was injecting himself in the ankle on the set of My Living Doll.
Wow. And when does the movie come out?
Oh.
I don't need.
It's funny.
I don't know if Hollywood, would greenlight such a project, because of everybody's, legendary status would be crumbled.
Hollywood loves this story. I mean, they love it. The question is, which production company is it going to be? It's bouncing around a number of production companies. We were going to do a documentary on it, but a lot of the documentary production companies and the networks, and History included, said we don't want to get involved with the Kennedys.
Exactly.
We just don't want to get involved with the Kennedy story.
Right.
And right. So that's they would rather do Kennedy and Flying Saucers than Kennedy and Max Jacobson.
Bill, I got to thank you for coming on today. And that was
pleasure.
Absolutely incredible story. And again, you've got me at a loss for words once again. Do me a favor, give my best to Nancy. She's the best. And
I sure will.
And I will talk to you over the weekend.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Bill, as always, thank you for coming on. That was incredible. And the email, I'm going to forward it all to you. Okay?
Okay, yes. I'm more than happy to read it. Yes.
Have a great weekend, Bill.
Thank you, sir.
This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. That's why you are here. You're learning something. The phone calls were coming in. I can't break in on a story like that. On the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Shoot us an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. When we come back, Carrie Cassidy, Project Camelot. We'll be right here. Don't go anywhere. Don't touch that mouse, everybody. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Oh, yeah. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, KJCR, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Shoot us an email to Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. I know that was pretty incredible. I promise. I'm just going to forward those straight to Bill. Wow. All right. Let's keep moving on. Shoot me an email to Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Friend, like, subscribe. Let's move straight on. We've got a busy night tonight. Carrie Cassidy conducts interviews documenting the testimony of whistleblowers with above top secret clearances, as well as researchers and experiencers covering all aspects of reality, both on and off planets. Carrie speaks at conferences around the world on subjects of ETs, the Illuminati agenda, mind control, the Matrix, prophecies. Carrie is an intuitive and has spent years researching the occult and studying Eastern philosophy. And if you haven't seen a Project Camelot video, you haven't lived. And I just want to welcome right now to the program, Carrie Cassidy. Carrie, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, Jimmy.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm better now that you are here with us. Okay. and I had leading up to the show, I was doing some stuff on the internet, and I had said, Carrie Cassidy, Project Camelot, she's smarter than you and I. So come and join us and learn something. Oh, man.
God, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, oh, yeah. So welcome to the show. And I start off the show with all the guests the same way, which is we're just going to have a conversation. We're just sitting in my living room. As a matter of fact, you're literally down the street. We should have just had you come into the studio, but you're literally down the street. You sound great. You sound like you're next to me. So let's just have a conversation. Let's see where it goes. There's no agenda, and let's see if we can get an agenda going. How's that?
Sounds good.
Let's stir the pot. Now, I want to let everybody know that everybody that's listening right now, you can go over to JimmyChurchRadio.com, and down on the bottom of the homepage is a Carrie Cassidy gallery. And so that will lead us through the conversation today, or part of it. And so we'll get to that in a bit. But you can go and check that out now. I do believe everything is posted up. And what you are looking at when you go to the gallery, there are some video stills. These are everything that Carrie, I asked her, I said, now, what is the most interesting thing that you can send? That's what you send. So those are videos captures, and I'm assuming these are some documentaries that we're going to talk about tonight. But also there's some photographs there too as well that are very interesting. That particle beam stuff, I don't know what to say about that, Kerry, and we'll get to that in a second. But and I really want to know what is involved there. So now, with all of that, let's get moving. You went to UCLA?
Well, I went to UCLA fiction film program. So, and I also went as an executive MBA student.
Okay. I did a little UCLA for about a year, and what did I take? Directing. I took screenwriting. Took video editing. I took just crazy playwriting. I took everything that I could find there that was like creative. I took and really enjoyed all of it. And so anyway, well, it's kind of like a weird association there. Don't worry about it. I didn't graduate. So.
Oh, well,
yeah.
It's all cool. My programs were a year each, and I was selected as the first writer, director, producer hyphenate.
Okay.
In that program, and it's a good program. I enjoyed it, and have to say that the entire program, I was unable to raise the money to shoot my film. So what I did is I shot it after I left the program.
Oh,
but
okay.
I cast it, and I had all these actually up and coming young actors in my film. It was kind of fun.
Like who?
I'm trying to rack my brain as to there's one woman that was going to be my potential star of the film, and she went on to become a very well-known actress, but her name escapes me at this moment.
Oh,
so
okay.
During this conversation tonight, I will try to remember it, because you've really gone back down memory lane here.
That's fine. But this is the thing about you for me that is impressive, and that is the body of work that has gone on for years. And I'm specifically talking about Project Camelot, but then there's all of your conferences and everything else that you've done too as well. But the body of work is, well, not only is it controversial because you've chosen your subjects of each documentary is very controversial, but the style of the shooting, the guerrilla type thing, is an interesting aspect of all of it. How did you make those kinds of choices when you guys set out, you and Bill, when you guys first set out? Was it that approach? Was there something that made you want to interview and capture everything that happens during an interview session? Was that the goal from the beginning?
Well, first I should tell people that I actually studied acting. So I got into this in a really strange way, but I also was a journalist in college. So I left college. I went to Hollywood. First I went to NYU film school, dropped out of that, studied acting with a private teacher called Saldano in Carnegie Hall. And I used to go 5 nights a week until after 12 midnight. It was a very sort of intense studio experience, and along the lines of what was way back then, the kind of thing that God, this has been forever. But okay, so I studied acting, and I did a couple commercials and so on, and I basically didn't like being told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up coming to Hollywood. I wrote screenplays, I worked for producers, I worked for agents, and I did that for about 19 years. And I tried to break through the glass ceiling and actually was unable to do so. So that's when I picked up a consumer-grade camcorder and went out and started shooting things on my own, and that's how I met Bill Ryan. So what I had was some very radical training called the Neighborhood Playhouse, Sanford Meisner Institute. People who have a background in acting will know what I'm talking about. And you will know the method. You might have heard, Brando and the method and all of that.
Right.
So I decided to incorporate that kind of the whole thing about that is about finding your truth as an actor.
Right.
And I decided to incorporate that into my sort of avant-garde style of interviewing. And I liked MTV video style back in the early days when it was very sort of moving camera, very guerrilla back in the early days. And so I incorporated that. I was sort of a creative person, and I was just very into being an artist and being, I guess you might say, even, an auteur.
Well, the way that you are able to get somebody to open up it's a talent, because not everybody is comfortable in front of the camera, or like you're saying, being told what to do and so forth. But in each one of your documentaries, the one reason why for me they are so watchable, and that's the key word there, because you can tune out in 5 minutes and then move on to the next thing. But your approach to it makes it very, very watchable, and you can't stop listening and can't stop watching what is going on the screen. And it's just, for instance, we were talking the other day, but the John Lear stuff, the Gary McKinnon interview comes to mind right away. And to get them to open up about subjects and it just seems like they'll tell you anything. So how was this something that developed over time, or were you able to do that out of the gate?
In a weird way, I was able to do it out of the gate, and I had no idea I was going to have that ability. I know that I'm an intuitive. Now, what happens during an interview is I actually get downloaded information that tells me where to go. And it's totally psychic because, and it's actually proven itself over and over. In fact, it just did so in my recent interview with Timothy Good, who wrote Above Top Secret and so on, and that's on the web. I can say that I got the download right during the interview to ask him about Rendlesham Forest.
Right.
I didn't know that he had a special encounter himself right prior to that incident that was pivotal for him, and in regard to that incident, and that it would cast light on that incident. That was an unknown piece of information. I had no idea he would have it. I was just given that, came out of the blue. I've had other things just come completely out of the blue and be dead on during interviews. And so I follow that kind of an intuition, but at the same time, I'm also, I look at it as a director would look at an actor, which means I'm very sympathetic to them on sort of an empathetic level during the interview.
Sure.
And I think that they picked that up.
Well,
and Bob Dean burst into tears. He was an old hand at interviews. He'd been on the circuit forever.
Right.
But when we connected, something clicked with him, and he'll even tell you after that he became a superstar. After that interview, the first interview. So something goes on. I can tell you, it's really amazing, and I do have, I would say, unseen help.
Okay. Well, where does that come from? When you say download, I'm not going to let that just get past us. When you say download, how does the download happen, and where do you think it comes from?
Well, this depends on your kind of, philosophy of life or understanding of the universe. But basically, one way I could tell the scientific types, I could revert to my Pete Peterson interview, which is incredible. Our interview with Pete Peterson is really legendary. And if anyone listening has not seen it, and you're interested at all in Black projects, and God knows, excuse me here, many, many subjects, you should definitely listen to that. But I can tell you that he would say it's in the information field. So another person might say it's in the universal mind, and a remote viewer might say, it's in a certain level, in this 4D sort of level that you can tap into. Someone might say it's anyway. You can go wherever you want with it. You can say it's sent to you by an ET. You could say it comes from you, from your higher soul. Ultimately, we're all psychic, and that's a fact.
Well,
human beings are incredibly telepathic. We are receivers and senders. Some of us just don't know it.
Well, when you say you can say that, okay, I can say that. But Carrie, would you say that? Is it Is it an ET influence? Is it off world? Is that what you're suggesting? I'm with you on that. I want, I mean, like you just said, you can say that. Well, I can, but is that what you are saying?
Well, basically, in a sense, it's all of them. Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's ETs. Sometimes it's my own psychic picking up something out of the information field, or picking up even from the person in their field. So it can be something what I would call semi-mundane in that regard, although some people might consider that a talent.
Right.
But then sometimes I actually have unseen visitors in the room. We have all kinds of interference. We have, scalar weaponry shot at us. We're being surveilled. We've had the most bizarre interference known to man, really, during the interviews themselves. And even during John Lear, which I know you like very much. I have to tell you, his whole house was so incredibly bugged, and that our cameras were so interfered with during those interviews.
Right.
It's amazing that we got what we got from John.
It seemed to me that at one point John was so comfortable he was going to tell us something that we probably didn't want to hear. I mean, it was like that. It just I hate to use the word compelling, but that's exactly what it was. And I love John. I think he's just like, the guy next door that has just lived the life that most men would want to live. I mean, it's an incredible life. Now, but there's one other thing I want to just say some of the obvious. You have hundreds, I don't know, do you have 150, 200,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel? It's some crazy, ridiculous amount. So, okay, let's not make light of it. That is an extraordinary thing. So you have that, and each one of your documentaries, when you say, I just almost started to laugh, because when you said, you should go check out this, if you haven't seen it, everybody has seen your, you have probably, 100 or 200,000 or 300,000 views on each one of your videos. You have a huge fan base. And so I'm not the only one that understands how easy it is to watch one of your documentaries. And it is appealing to a very, very, very large audience. How many documentaries have you shot now to date?
Actually, I don't know. I have. It's really a library at this point. It's over. I know that down and out videos are something like 200, 250. But I have live stream things that I'm doing nowadays because I don't travel as much. So we've got, I've got a huge number there now, growing number. I do these things with group, sort of called Camelot roundtables. So I do that. I do radio shows like you do every week on Friday night.
Right.
On Revolution Radio. I'm interviewing people there. It's just crazy. It's crazy. The amount. In fact, it's very hard to manage. The website, I have to give kudos to my webmaster, Tommy Hansen. He's been with me now, I think it's 4 years, actually, and stuck it out. I don't hardly pay him. For at least the first 2 years, I didn't pay him a dime, I don't think. I can't, we don't have a lot of money. I'm constantly asking for donations. It's crazy, but we have been able to stay afloat because people have supported us.
Right.
And my former partner, Bill Ryan, who, left after 4 years, and I've been doing it for the last 4 years. So we've been doing this for 8 years. It is a labor of love. It's around the clock.
Well, the body of work speaks for itself. Now, this is, I'm going to change gears really quick, and then I want to get to the gallery and pick your brain on a few things there too as well. But let's change gears a little bit. You and I were talking last week about time travel, and I called you specifically about David Lewis Anderson. Now, what that conversation was about last week, that was last week. Well, that's not what the conversation is now. But I want to talk a little bit about your views on that, and David Lewis Anderson specifically, and time travelers. We can touch a little bit on Teeter, but you made a comment to me last week, and I want you to expand on it now, where you had said to me that we are all time travelers. What did you mean by that?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, we are. In essence, you have to look at it this way. Einstein was even talking about there being 5 dimensions.
Right.
At this point, hyperdimensional physics will tell you there may be unlimited dimensions. There's certainly, upwards of, let's say, 15 densities and more. Dimensions and densities go vertical. This is a way to visualize it. Now, it may not literally be like this, but this is a way to visualize it. Densities go vertical and dimensions go horizontal. We're in 3D going into 4D. We've really moved into 4D for all intents and purposes at this time. We are not always here. In other words, this is sort of even scientifically been talked about. You flicker in and out moment to moment. We have multiple lives. All time is simultaneous. So you have to understand that we are existing even in our other lives, of which we have many, and some are on the earth and some aren't. You have many incarnations. Some of us tap into our previous incarnations. And so you are occupying, in other words, you are a much larger sort of being, if you think of it, if you want to think of it in terms of sort of size, even though size is irrelevant when you get out of this body. And we inhabit space on all the different levels, for the most part. Now, some of us are clones, and that doesn't happen with them. But, if you're human, now humans, from my point of view, are a genome of at least 12 ET races. So we're a mixture of the genetics of 12 ET races minimum, and there are new kind of races coming on board as we speak, because they're still continuing this crazy experiment. And all of this kind of stems back from the research I've done over the years, the people I've talked to, my own intuitive studies. I can tell you that Wingmakers, for example, talks about this experiment being a purposeful experiment where, in essence, and I think Wingmakers was talking about at least 7, possibly as many as 12, races getting together and contributing their genetics to make this thing that we call human, this vehicle that we call a human being. Mm-hmm. So we are a hybrid race. And what that means is that we have countless almost unlimited potential, which has all been we've been dumbed down and deceived on so many levels. And so we are time travelers. Time is, if you understand the concept of time, we have the ability to go from here to, and even consciously to pick up thoughts, to pick up information, and physically to go elsewhere. At night, in your dreams, wherever you want, you can astral travel, but you can go beyond that. So you travel in your light body, assuming you have created one, you're at a certain level. So that's what I mean by time traveler.
When we were talking about, time in itself is, it's just in your mind. That's it. There's nothing, your body doesn't know what time is. The only thing that is lets us know that time is going by is the sun setting every single day. But other than that, time is something that's very, very, very hard to explain, and that's where I tend to understand and agree with what you're saying. It's we're all time traveling because it's all in our mind from the get go. Now I want to, but David Lewis Anderson, with him. I've been trying to chase him down. I want him on this show. He's been about as elusive as it gets, and you and I had that conversation last week. And you said to me, "Well, Jimmy, I think he's a time traveler. That's why we can't nail him down." Have you? What has your correspondence been with him, and can you get him to contact this show? Now, do you have a fan moving in the background? Is there a fan, or is there something cycling? I hear a hum coming in that's not from this end.
Okay. Well, I can ask my my partner here who can help me.
Yeah, there's
I
something.
have somebody.
Yeah, there's something cycling. But anyway, don't worry about it. Have him. He can probably hear me. Have him look into that. And I think.
Yeah. I think,
here it comes.
I don't know if the heater or if the dishwasher or the washing machine or anything is on.
Okay.
But any of those things, I can't hear anything over here. But possibly you're hearing something.
Okay. All right. So we will ignore it. It's not affecting your voice at all. It's in the background. So back to David. Where is he today? Right now? Do you know where he is?
No, I don't. But I do want to say that I do think he is a time traveler. Now, I think he may be more of a time traveler in the more sort of here and now sense than you or I, possibly. I'm not sure why I know that. It's just a feeling, okay? And because he is, we don't realize that we actually have. I mean, I know you're very into John Teeter and the John Teeter story, but
right.
I believe there are other time travelers here. There's a television show called Continuum that started rather recently ago, and I think that sort of depicts what it's like for to be a time traveler in a sense very well. But there's no reason to assume that we aren't time traveling, and some of us. I have a friend who has time travel dreams all the time, and they actually go to other places and people can sometimes see them when they're there visiting. And they've even talked to people in those times. Some of us are more conscious of our abilities than others. Again, I know when I can time travel literally in a very bizarre way, when I go to certain places like Egypt, I suddenly can see the scene around me starts to morph and I start to see another time. And I can't explain how it happens or why.
Right.
But it's really, it's not like something I can make happen. It's not like my imagination is kicking in or any of that stuff. It's just happening. And it's just amazing.
Well, there's no question that in my mind, I'm a firm believer in time travel. I am. And that's it. I can't prove anything, but there are one of the things I cannot explain, and I know that this happens to me and it happens to everybody else, but is deja vu. Deja vu messes with my mind. And when it happens, there's no question for me what's going. I don't want to hear from somebody else about their time travel experiences, or no, I shouldn't say it in such a broad sense. What I'm trying to say is I can only speak about my experience. Before somebody wants to tell me about theirs, I know what I deal with. And so when deja vu is a real thing, at least for me and the way that I experience it, and there's just no way that can happen unless there is something going on that involves time travel. How could I possibly experience something from the future or the past constantly and know exactly what's about to happen? Because I've had this experience in the past, and in some cases it's years ago. So
you're like me then. You're what I call a precog. That's what you're getting. I mean, those deja vu, I see it like a film strip. I've seen pieces of the future that have happened right in front of my eyes years later, and the details are absolutely exact.
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely exact.
So that's where I can just stop, and I don't know why the phenomenon is not discussed more in the open, because I know everybody must experience it to some degree. And I know when it happens to me, you almost want to grab the table and just go, okay, here we go. All right. All right. Yeah. I know what you're about to say. Oh, he just said it. Oh, man. And you got to write it out. But it is real. It's not fake. I'm not crazy. It is. And, and especially when you know that you've had the same thought or film strip, as you say, multiple times, in years past. And so you've experienced it so many times that when it does happen, you just you know it, and it's exact, just like you're saying, and it's a phenomenon. And so,
well, it helps to prepare you, I can say, for what's going on. I mean, one of the things that I say is that when I have sometimes I'll have multiple deja vus, as you call them, and I will know that there is something momentous about to occur, and that I had marked those way ahead of time. So I pay very close attention during those times.
Now, this is the thing about David Louis Anderson, and for those out there that don't know who I'm talking about, there's a big chunk of people that do. But with Anderson, he was a guy that that had a company called the Time Travel Institute, and he was on with Art a couple of times, and did these 1, 2, 3 hour interviews with Art. Very interesting, very technical, very comprehensive, lots of information there. And he built up a lot of hope for all of us about the future of time travel, the technology that was there. There was a couple of examples that he had where one of them would be like for heart transplants and donor organs, being able to slow down time and have them in a box, and have his technology in the box and slowing down time around the heart to preserve it for a long time until it went to the appropriate donor, and things like that were just very exciting. And he explained it in such a way back then that it just made sense for all of us. And I know I was right with Art at the time, where it's like, yeah, I get it. Well, I got it too. He explained it in such a way. Now, that's who David Louis Anderson is, and you can go and Google him and check it out. Now, I want to move a little bit more in the future, move ahead of those times. He then produced a video, and it's called, anyway, he's got a video out there, and in this video, he almost looks computer generated. He's got a look to him. You remember
Yes.
You remember Max Headroom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so there's that element to David Louis Anderson where you're looking at. You don't know if you can see a real person standing there, but yet there's something about him that is freaky. And you're listening to him talk. You're looking at his eyes, and you're listening to his speech and his delivery. He's very controlled. He's very smooth, and like I said, almost holographic. Even though it's a real guy standing there.
I agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
There's something mysterious about this guy, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And so when you tell me he's a time traveler, then, and then with his story and everything, and the fact that nobody can really nail the guy down, you know what I mean?
Yep, I do.
I would like to meet him. I would like to have him on the show, and I want him to explain himself. Well, and I'm being serious. And when I say explain himself, now that we know what we know about him, so many years have gone by now. It's been about a dozen years since his first appearance on with Art Bell. We know a lot more about him, but we also know a lot less. There's no way to contact him. There's no way to. He's only done a very, 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 very limited amount of public appearances, and you can count it on one hand. So that's the part I want to have him explain. Why have you been so elusive if everything is true, right? If everything is true, the Time Travel Institute, your network, your work in India and Europe and here in the United States and Long Island and Arizona, if everything is true and you take that in its totality, then why have you handled yourself like you have? That's what I want to know.
I totally understand where you're coming from and why you want to know. I mean, I wanted him to speak at my time travel conference that I had a year ago. Actually, a year ago in April of 2013, which was a fabulous conference, and the videos from that conference are on sale on my website to this day, as well as streaming for very low price for everyone. And Henry Deacon's on-stage appearance and discussion of life on Mars, and et cetera, and his working experiences there makes the whole thing well worthwhile. I had some other fascinating speakers, but up to sometime right before the last month, David Lewis Anderson was confirmed. He was supposedly very excited to appear, was planning on it. Everything was set. I was going to fly him out from I believe he was in the East Coast. He sometimes works in India. I don't know. I can say that he works in black projects, or did for a very long time. And because of that, of course, he's heavily monitored. Now, the reason he backed out at the last minute was supposedly he decided this was going to be bad press for his UN children effort or something. Mm-hmm. But I was also made aware that that was a completely bogus reason for him backing out.
Okay.
Because obviously he wouldn't have committed to doing it because he was already involved in his sort of UN thing. But when he accepted the proposal, but this is what happened. I mean, the guy, somehow someone clamped down on him. We had all kinds of interference. I mean, the person I was working with to set this whole thing up was taken offline. Bizarre, absolutely bizarre things happened around that time travel conference. So this was just one of them. But yeah, I mean, David Lewis Anderson, that was a huge disappointment. Because I had been a fan forever, and I heard him on Art Bell all those years ago.
Right. Well, I wanted to go, and I remember I was reading about the controversy last year. It was 2013, that conference, and I wanted to go check out Lou. I thought there was a weird thing when I saw that he was appearing. I said to myself, no, he's not. he's just not. I didn't want to get my hopes up, and then... So anyway, okay, so let's move on from the David Lewis Anderson. But if he's a time traveler, if he's for real, then he already knows that you and I are having this conversation. So
well,
he knows
you may
how.
Know because of another reason, actually.
So he knows how to get a hold of me. I would love to have him on this show. And so now when because of who. I mean, whistleblowers is a crazy thing for you to dip your toe into. Do you find you mentioned it earlier, but do you find yourself looking over your shoulder all the time? Do you come out of Ralph's with Gelson's with a bag of groceries and feel eyes on you? And I'm being serious. Do you feel surveilled?
Well, I know that if I talk to the wall, that they will hear me. As they say.
Okay.
That's an old CIA joke, and I'm sure you've heard it a million times before. And it's true. Certainly now it's true for almost everyone. I mean, I am convinced that there is an AI that is basically housed at the NSA facility in Salt Lake City area, the new one that they built, but it probably is also housed in other places as well, underground. I think it's grown. It started out from Promise Software. It is orchestrating the financial downturn that we're experiencing. I think that for all intents and purposes, this planet is now being run by an AI. I think they basically give the AI certain information, and then they decide how human beings are going to react. They're able to do these things like they did. The Aurora, Colorado false flag and other false flags of this nature. They're basically, they put the scenarios into the computer. The AI figures it out. They give all the different trajectories, all the different possible things that could happen, the kind of human reactions, et cetera, the blowback, even the internet outing of these things. I mean, we're really talking about a very sophisticated system right now. So the fact that I'm surveilled is, sure, I have a higher level of surveillance than your average Joe, so to speak. But so do you.
Yes.
And so does Art Bell. And so, I'm in good company.
Yeah, everybody that listens to this show, I'm not going to go there right now, but yeah, I've had my issues over the last couple of months. Okay, let's do this. Let's do some fun stuff. Let's get over to jimmychurchradio.com. Let's have everybody head over to the Carrie Cassidy. You know what? I think I said earlier on the commercial break, Carrie Kennedy. Well, I was talking about the Kennedys with Bill Burns. And I don't know. I didn't get any email or text on it, but I think I said coming up next we have Kerry Cassidy. And did you hear what he had to say about?
Yes, I was listening.
Wow,
fascinating stuff. I'm not so sure about all of that. Let me say that. And that's very interesting that he came on and did that. Now you got to understand. I see conspiracies around every corner, and I think they're real conspiracy facts. And so I never hear anything without questioning it. And I have to tell you that I'm not going to take that on face value. Now, I do believe there are drugs. Everyone knows there's drugs even now in the White House. Obama, I've been told Obama's on drugs constantly. There's always that stuff going on. And a lot of it is legitimate. These people have access to whatever they want. A lot of them are bored out of their minds, running the country. If you have an AI running everything, there's not a lot for you to do. We don't really need a government under these circumstances. Government's an illusion anyway. But let me just say that I don't believe that that Kennedy was necessarily on drugs. I do think that because tonight I was planning to talk about the Kennedy assassination and the fact that that was a coup in America, that Bill Burns was basically tasked with coming on the show and talking just in that way so he could undercut what I'm about to say about Kennedy.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's get to that in a second.
Is that controversial enough?
Wow. Okay. Oh, what a night on the air. My brain's going to just explode. It's seriously throbbing on my frontal lobes. Okay, let's go to everybody head over to jimmychurchradio.com and scroll down. There is the Carrie Cassidy gallery. Carrie, can you see? Are you there? Are you looking at the gallery?
Yes, I am there.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I want to skip around or if I want to go in order. These are posted in the order that you sent them to us. Okay. So I don't know if you want to go in order or will you indulge me to jump ahead?
You can do whatever you want. And let me just say that if you just heard that was my dog.
Oh, no, I didn't.
He's having a bad dream. Yeah, he was sort of,
what kind of dog?
He's a golden retriever.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
I think he's an Uber golden retriever. That's what I call him because he's actually, I think he's party T.
Well, everybody
sound like a wacko.
No. We have 3 dogs. We have 2 miniature schnauzers, and then we have all 3 dogs were rescues. But and then I literally rescued this. We don't know what she is, but she was living at this car lot, a car lot here down the street for like 3 months last year. Sleeping underneath cars. Nobody could catch her. And I went over there one day and got her and brought her home. And so we have her too. And so she's a little tiny, little white. I don't even know what but she's turned into this. She had no hair when we got her. She froze to death for 3 months last year.
Oh, my.
Wow. Wow. You know what? Okay, for everybody out there, just to let you know what just happened, only the internet went down. Routers went down. No power changed. The computers, the system, the electricity, nothing changed. Just the internet dropped at that moment, at that point in the conversation. Carrie, we got you back. Are you there?
And I want to say that I was online. I was not off the internet, but we were both knocked off at the same time. I was hung up from you. This is not an accident.
You had to bring up Obama That's what did it, man. I was like, here we go.
Obama, I'm talking about Kennedy.
That was just absolutely nuts. And I wonder if the websites crashed too at the same time. Wow, that was bizarre. Okay, we'll get the email. I would like for everybody out there, what did you hear? What happened? Did the websites go down too? I don't know, because everything just blipped at the same time on all three screens. And the thing is, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 computers in front of me. 2 are online, or 3 are online. 2 are not. I use them for other things. But the 3 that were online just went blank. The computers didn't shut down. They just went blank. That was bizarre. I've never seen that happen. Oh, wow. Okay, so let's get back to where we were. And the funny thing is, I wanted to reach into the whole Gary McKinnon escapade that went down. And it's exactly what we're talking about right now. That's exactly what it was for him. What was it like speaking with him? And the way that he comes across, I've tried to watch every piece of footage out there with Gary. And Gary, for everybody out there listening right now, Gary McKinnon is the guy that we talked about him briefly last night. He came up last night. Gary McKinnon was the computer guy over in Great Britain that was breaking into NASA's computers in Florida, searching for UFO stuff, whatever he could find. He was fascinated with the subject. And then got busted. They grabbed a hold of his computer, shut him down, showed up in Great Britain, tried to arrest him, tried to extradite him to the United States, bring charges forward. But you happened to, right after all of this went down, how were you able to chase down and interview Gary McKinnon? You guys were at like a backyard pub or something, right?
Right. Well, it was just me and my camcorder. I think Bill at that time was otherwise engaged with some kind of previous work thing he had to do, because in the early days he still had a job back in the sort of back roads of Britain. But Gary was very, very brilliant in that interview. I think it's the best interview that's ever been done with Gary. I will say that Ancient Aliens has just purchased the right to show some excerpts from that interview. So it'll be on Ancient Aliens, I assume, in the near future. It is really Gary showing you who he really is or was at that time. Now, since that time, he's been diagnosed with Asperger's. That did get him off the charges. But, I want to say that what he found, which was evidence of the secret space program, non-terrestrial officers lists of what are called fleet-to-fleet transfers off-planet.
Right.
This was groundbreaking. And I also want to say that there was very little security, that there was a honeypot being operated at probably NASA and the Pentagon. I don't know how or what they were doing with it. But bottom line is we had a number of hackers. They had to profile and choose one to use in as sort of the example, the fall guy. And they chose Gary. I don't see Gary in the same light as the people who so-called diagnosed him. Mm-hmm. I see him as incredibly brilliant. And what can I say? He found evidence.
Yeah, his description on how it went down was pretty fascinating. And for him to the way that he did the interview, this is why I believe Gary McKinnon. Well, I believe him because why would the United States care? They don't breaking into computers and there was $500,000 in damage or whatever. It was just ridiculous, trumped up charges just to get him extradited here so they could shut him up.
That's right.
Firmly believe that is the case. There's no doubt in my mind that he was exposed to something. He saw something he wasn't supposed to. And in a very simple way, he was able to crack into those computers. He didn't have he did it with a 56K modem. It's not like you know what I mean?
It's
It's
laughable.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it is. That's what I'm trying to say. In a very simple way, he cracked into NASA, and he really did do it. There's those are the facts. For the British government to step in and block his extradition was pretty fascinating. I'm surprised that they stepped in and stopped it. I really thought that he was coming here, and they were definitely, we were never going to hear from him again. But
let's give credit where credit is due. His mother, Janice Sharp, had connections in the music industry. She pulled out all the stops, and he became what's called a cause celeb in Britain. And they had people demonstrating. They had to step up. And I believe he became a sort of one of those things that actually Snowden is, in a sense. These people become like I'm not sure what the wording is, but like trading cards. In other words, they let him off in exchange for something that we don't know behind the scenes, that the Brits gave over to the Americans gave over something to the Brits. Maybe the Brits wanted some inside information, some inside access to secret space, whatever it is, some high level something. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But this is what goes on behind the scenes. As you know, you're no dummy. Obviously, you've been around, and I'm going to interview you.
That's fine.
if I get a chance. But yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Well, okay. Now let's get. I want to end it with Gary with just these words. I hope that what we see in the video of yours is actually who he is. He's an honest guy. He's just got a story to tell. I think he surprised himself. I don't think he expected to find anything. He was doing it for fun. That was it. He was just trying to see if there was anything out there with the 3 letters UFO, and he stumbled upon something, and I don't think he regrets it, but I think he's being honest in his delivery, and I hope that what is on the Project Camelot documentary is actually who he is. And that's my question to you, and we'll move on. Is that Gary McKinnon, the guy that you captured? On
absolutely.
video. Okay.
That's absolutely him. But I think there's one little piece that you aren't quite catching, which is that he was a dedicated follower of truth, and that he did want to out the UFO secrecy. He did want to. He wasn't just fooling around. I know that's been put out there. It may even have been part of the defense after a certain period of time. I know for a fact that if you listen to my interview with him, you will see he was, he was a truth seeker.
Well, and okay, maybe I chose the wrong words, because you're absolutely right. When I say for fun, what I mean by that is he wasn't a professional hacker.
Not at all. Yeah.
He didn't have teams of people behind him. He was just a guy going over to his mom's house. Just a guy going over to his mom's house where she had a simple 56K modem connection, and he had a very simple program that allowed him to, get to these passwords, or lack of passwords, actually. And so in a very simplistic way, he did crack. Was he? Yeah, a seeker of truth? Sure. But he was fascinated with the subject, and he wanted to get the answers for himself. That's all this is. It's not a big, complicated case. But what he did stumble upon was the truth. He saw something, and that is, and our government knows that he saw something. They know exactly what he accessed, and that.
Sure.
So let's get back to the photograph, or the pictures in the gallery that were sent over. Everybody just go over to jimmychurchradio.com, and like I said, I'm going to indulge myself and pick a couple of things here, and I want you to tell me what we're looking at. Let's talk about it. The first thing that I want everybody, just go to jimmychurchradio.com right now, so you know what we're talking about. Scroll down, there will be the gallery for Carrie Cassidy. And let's jump down to the third row, the second picture of the sky, and there's two pictures of something shooting out of the clouds. Let's go to the black and gold one, the second picture from the left. I'm opening it up now. What is this?
Okay, well, these are particle beam weapons in theory, and probably practice. And this comes from a witness that was filmed on our television show, which was a pilot for True TV that has been aired on True TV a number of times, and also is now available on the internet, on YouTube, and so on. And this is one of the witnesses there. And I actually have to go back and look for his name, but he was a smart guy who had been actually threatened for going out to the Dugway area in Utah. And there was a place that was fenced with signs. And we were there with film, a professional film team in that case. And they filmed us there. And you can watch the the TV show pilot, which should have been made into a series. But because of the powers that be didn't want that to happen. And I can prove that.
What was this? Was this shot?
It never happened.
This was shot at Dugway?
Yeah, right alongside in that area, in that same vicinity in Utah, up on a ridge, sort of on the outskirts of the Dugway area, I guess you might say.
And how much time did you spend up at Dugway? There's actually another picture here that we'll get to that, but how much time did you spend up at Dugway, and did you see anything like this? This is a pretty incredible picture, actually. It's a pretty phenomenal sight. And for our government to say that this stuff doesn't exist, but here it is at Dugway, photographed is enough for me. But did you ever see anything at Dugway? Was there anything crazy that went on when you were up there?
Well, what we saw was the actual place where the weapon itself is kept, so to speak. It's behind a fence, and there's all these sort of mechanical. I don't know what they are. I'm not a technical person, but it's fenced off with all this keep out kind of signs and whatnot. And apparently, this researcher, who, again, he's on our his name and everything. He's there. He hands us the photographs. He tells us he's been threatened. He doesn't want to go public any more than he did. He wasn't able to even return directly to the area where he directed us to as well. But, he had photographed this, I believe, or gotten it from a secret witness for himself. And but the weapon area, we were right there in the television show, filming outside the area of the perimeter of the fence.
Is this being fired from the ground up, or is it being fired from the sky down? Okay, so the weapon is sitting on the ground, and this particle beam weapon is shooting up towards space.
That's our understanding.
That is just an incredible picture. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. So the other
it's
one,
very intense.
Yes, it is. It is.
And I've been told that this weapon, which is more than just your average particle beam, it may not even be called that. It may be called something else altogether. It shoots all the way to the moon.
Well, sure. Okay. Well, why wouldn't it?
In one. What I understand, and I believe there's one on the moon as well. We have another witness. Her first name's Nancy. Can't remember her last name, but she was threatened over this information and wrote a book about it. But there is a beam weapon on the moon. She was part of the military, and very excellent story. But she and her husband got so spooked and were really threatened over that story. These are weapons that the beam is. In other words, in this shot, it actually looks like only a piece of the beam, kind of like something's shot.
Right.
But in the other photograph, you can kind of see it can be a solid beam.
Yeah. Now, everybody, go to the next picture, the picture right next to the orange particle beam weapon. There's picture number 3 from the left in the bottom row is a blue beam, and this is this is at Dugway as well?
No. This is a different place altogether. New Mexico, as a matter of fact.
Is this Dulcie?
No.
Okay.
This is a, I guess you might say, sort of an undisclosed location where we had a guy, first name Sam, and this is a video that's available on our site. I think I sent you the links to these
you did.
videos.
You did.
But this particular video, I forget his last name, starts with a Z. He, I think, also went into hiding. He was very afraid. He came forward to us, and he made a video. And we actually put his video on our YouTube.
Now, I'll let everybody know right now. We have the links to the video, and we will get those up. The producers here are listening to me. So, Carrie, we will do our best to do that in real time and get those up. And as soon as they are up, I will let everybody know where when the links are up, and we'll get everybody to go check this out. I will do it myself.
He's a very smart young man. He was quite young at the time. He was living, he had sort of left home and kind of was out, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, trying to find himself, gone on a wilderness trek, whatever. And he had taken a part-time job on a farm that was out in the middle of the wilderness in, I believe, New Mexico. And I forget if we have any more specifics than that. But bottom line is he saw this beam up on the mountain ridge there, and he made a video about it, talks about what he saw, how he came across it. And then he disappeared literally. He has not been, we have not heard or seen him since. And I think he went back into hiding.
When was this originally presented? When did he shoot this?
I'd have to look at the video, and because I don't want to bring in more problems with my computer and sound here, I'm not going to do that while I'm on the air here. But I will tell you that it's on the video. It will be dated probably around 2011 or 10.
Okay.
Maybe even as early as 2009.
But it's recent.
Oh, well, it's in the last few years.
Yeah, exactly. And you can tell by the shape of, and everybody, you need to, if you're not looking at this, you need to look at it and understand. You can tell by the shape that it looks like it's going from the ground up into the clouds.
Again, yes. And he went up to the installation, by the way. He tried to, he was quite brave, and he went up to a certain point. They only made it a certain distance. But they reached roads that were blocked off with military blocking. You know, they couldn't go any further, and he went as far as he could to get as close as he could to the actual installation that was there.
Just absolutely incredible. I'm looking at it now. Okay, so now let's the Dugway shot that you sent us. So everybody understands what we're talking about. It's in Utah. And let's open. Is this from Google Earth?
You know, I don't remember. It's a shot from our television show.
Okay.
And during the television show, now, interesting thing happened. We shot at Dugway and a number of scenes and a whole day of shooting. And we warned the filmmakers, who were Hollywood filmmakers and, you know, made countless television shows and were real pros and knew what they were doing and backing everything up and this and that and the other. And we warned them that as Camelot, they would have problems and that they would have footage erased and that they needed to make a contingency about that. They laughed at us. And then it happened. We shot for a whole day out at Dugway, and the whole day was erased, and they just couldn't believe it. So, yes, Dugway is actually, you know, I sort of have built a story here with the photographs. So one builds on the other in a certain way, because apparently our information from secret witnesses and even from Gordon Nobel, who's in one of these photographs, is that the Venture Star, which is photographed here, and I believe, I don't know for sure, I think this might be a shot from the movie Avatar, in which they actually put, I mean, they're very ballsy, of course. They put things right in your face, and then they act as though, you know, this is what we've got, and, you know, so you don't know, so what? But they fly scientists in and out of Dugway off to Mars and the moon, from what we understand, in this in the Venture Star, and it flies in and out of Dugway, Utah, in a submerged bunker base type thing. It's covered in the ground. You can't see it if you fly over it.
Now, Venture Star is the fourth photograph in the bottom row, all the way down in the fourth, first on the right, fourth from the left in the bottom row. You scroll over it; it says Avatar Venture Star. And again, where did you get this? Where did you get this JPEG from?
You would ask me that.
I have to.
No, I don't know where I got it, to be honest. And I have to say, you didn't give me much notice to do this. And so as far as looking for photos, and, as Camelot, 8 years in operation, we have gotten some photos.
Right.
So I didn't have time to go back. And I also have to say that, giving credit where credit's due, Bill Ryan was more of a photo kind of buff, craft type person than me, because I'm all about the occupants.
Right.
and not so much about the photographs, although, I have interest in, just if it's part of the story, I want to know. But so he would know more details than I in that particular case.
Well, we know officially and unofficially what Dugway is, and there's an advanced weapons program going on there. That's what we do. That's what it is, and that's what the government tells us. But more and more evidence, and you're again suggest, I've heard this again, I'm hearing it from you, that our secret space program is operating out of Dugway. And also that we have moved a lot of Area 51's research up to Dugway. Now, its cover has been blown for a while now, but it's certainly a lot more remote and further away from things than Area 51. And everybody knows about Area 51. So when you get up to Dugway, is it that secure too? Do you feel the intimidation? Are you immediately swarmed? What's the environment like at Dugway?
Yes. Dugway is a very bizarre place. It has, you go to a certain place, and then there's this, it's like a little town.
Okay.
Which is, I think, I laugh. I think it's kind of freaky, because the town is like this little kind of old-fashioned town, which is surrounded by a fence and guards and all this kind of electronic everything and surveillance and this and that. But inside are these little houses, kind of like you can see if you look, because you can see that it's a chain link fence. And there's a guard gate and the whole 9 yards. And then the whole area, Dugway, is huge. So it goes on for miles, and you can drive on the outward perimeter of the fence, and they track you as you do. And all along the fence are those kinds of signs that say, that we can use lethal force and all this kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And so, yes, it's crazy, but it's kind of like a Stepford. I think of it as a Stepford town. In other words, you could just imagine you walk into a house and then you go down into the underground base, right?
Right.
So I don't know.
Where do all the workers at Dugway, where do they live?
Well, certainly, with the maglev trains that go from underground in I forget which of it's one of the Vegas hotels, which John Lear talks about, and other people. No doubt about it whatsoever. All the bases are connected by these maglev trains. Sean David Morton, his whistleblower, who gave him all the information for his book, Sands of Time, which is excellent, and I'm just giving him a plug here because I just think it's probably, the information is so important. And that whistleblower ran Area 51. The fact of the matter is maglev trains are everywhere. They go to Pine Gap. They go under so you can get places in a matter of an hour or less. But there'll be no doubt whatsoever that that's how they bring in their workers.
Yeah, because there's just not much around Dugway, but yet Dugway itself is full of infrastructure. There's a lot of work going on there, but you just have to ask yourself, where do they live? How do they get here? Because it is about as remote as it gets.
Salt Lake City is not far away. Let's get down to it. Salt Lake City is also home of the Mormons, and there's a whole thing about the Mormons and bloodlines and all of this. And there are some aspects to people in Salt Lake City Not sure what they're drinking, what's in their water.
Stepford. You said the key word.
And then we were just there. I was just there in Park City, Utah, which is very close to Salt Lake City. And I have to say that we experienced some of the weirdest energetics there I've ever had, ever. We were like in a hotel room that it was like the fun room. You walked to one end of the hotel room and you were like, when like in one of those mirrors where you sink down and you're really small. And then when you walk to the other end of the room, you're really big.
Yeah.
Seriously. And then you feel like you're on a hill when you're on a flat floor. I mean, it was completely bizarre.
Okay, tell us about, now let's go in order. Let's go to you and Bill. You guys are in Russia. This is picture number 1 for everybody in the top row. And so that's you and Bill. Tell us about the picture, but who is it that you're interviewing down here that's in the inset? He's also in another picture here.
Right, Valery Uvarov. And he was head of the UFO kind of weird desk in a sense for the I don't know what you call it, KGB or whatever they call it nowadays. Back then. Now I don't think he's doing this anymore. But he's a very, very intelligent man, and he was God knows, what that picture is really about a moment in time in Camelot where we had accomplished what in essence was, from our perspective, maybe from my perspective, a miracle. We had interviewed Boriska, the Indigo Boy from Mars, and we had made it to Russia. We had crossed, all these borders. We had done things that no one else was able to do, and no one has done since. And we interviewed Valery Uvarov. It's a very important interview. And that moment was simply, I was goofing around. I was making faces at the camera. Bill was kind of doing an update. I think we were videoing as well. And we just come back from interviewing Valery Uvarov. And the testimony was, really stellar, very fascinating stuff. Things like installations in China and Australia, shooting down UFOs and incoming meteors. Very good stuff, because Russia, in some ways, has always been more open to its people about the UFO stories.
When we are... I don't want to disclose a whole lot here, but we are looking into Russia very hard over here at the network, and trying to get information is nearly impossible. And even though, like you're saying, it's very open, but it was also, they're very open with the subject compared to the United States, especially. But trying to get to what is real and what is not. There are a few instances over there. We think Roswell or Shag Harbor or the Phoenix Lights or Kecksburg. These are, the RB stories and so, all very strong case. They have stuff going on over there that just make us look ridiculous. There are a couple of things going on over there. A couple of crashes and craters that it's our researchers over here would have a field day, but we can't get to it. It's all very remote. Russia's a very large country, and they have a hard time dealing with it themselves. The country is that big. When you have something that you need to go investigate, and it's 1,000 miles from the nearest road, you don't just drive a car up or get to these places. They're very remote. And so trying to get information out of it, even for the Russians, is very difficult to do. So what did he have to, what did he have to say?
Well, it's very extensive. But again, he was talking about specifically, in terms of this installation, which it's supposedly an ET or alien built installation here on Earth, and we have a number of them. One was found in China. One is supposedly off the coast of Florida. He said there was one in Australia that was no longer operational, and he believed there was one in Russia, I believe. as well as a few other places on the planet. But this is this information has never gone anywhere. In other words, our interview with him is one of the few places you will ever hear this information. The information about the capability being given to this planet a long time ago to deal with incoming bodies, be they asteroids or meteors or UFOs, you name it, that they could be shot down on the way in from these installations.
Does he ever? Was he ever told to be quiet?
Well, I think there were some things he was allowed to talk about at that time. Maybe they, you have to understand for Camelot, because we kind of came in a bit under the radar. I don't think they quite realized we were going to have the impact we did. And I think that we got indoors and talked to people and got disclosures that we won't get these days. People will not get these days. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I thought in a certain sense, I mean, you can watch him. You can watch. This is the power of video, and the power of the way I do interviews, which is I ask questions. We keep the camera on the person the whole time. This is not sound bites. Right.
You
can decide whether the guy's lying.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But he's written several books. He's an avid Egyptologist, very interested in all of that. He was something of an explorer. They were even planning, I think, to go to Antarctica or some kind of somewhere like that at the time. He's very knowledgeable, I think, and let in on quite a few secrets. I'm sure he was careful. Maybe he thought telling us that information. What can you do with that information? Really think about it. I mean, it's not like I'm telling you where the installations are.
Right.
So it's kind of like looking at it like that. He said a number of things on that interview that are fascinating, that if you follow them out, could lead you down some very, very interesting roads, like the 9 pyramids they were building outside St. Petersburg.
Right.
Not only to cure cancer, but to do something else. And what that something else had to do with Earth changes.
Right.
In the future.
Right.
I mean, so we're really talking about this is the thing with Camelot interviews. When we get somebody like him, like Leo Zagami, like, Pete Peterson, these people have information and they're just burning to say it to someone. We're there. We're very avid, interested listeners. We happen to have the camera rolling, but it's not intimidating. We don't have a big crew. We don't have all the bells and whistles you're supposed to have on purpose.
Right.
For those people out there that love to criticize. The bottom line is we just got in places, that just under the radar. And these people would talk, and we caught them on camera. And if you listen carefully and you add the dots, what I noticed is that people tend to get stuck. They stay with one little factoid, but they don't add things together. They really don't seem to know how to do that.
Right.
And that's actually what Camelot was always all about. We're compelling because we're telling a story that's ongoing. It's like a novel in which you're reading and you want to know what happens next. And that's the way I look at it. We don't know where we're going to be tomorrow with this planet, but I can guarantee you that if I can get hold of the story, I'm going to tell it.
Did you go to the 9 pyramids in St. Petersburg? Were you able to go and check those out?
No, we weren't, but we were able to be in St. Petersburg, and that was a thrill. It was a thrill to be in that environment. It was a thrill to interview somebody, from that level of the government.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, we were surveilled. At one point, he showed us an amazing video, and I can't remember if it's actually on the interview or not. I have to go through the interview to see, showing this amazing he had a time-lapse camera that he set up in his room with a crystal. And I don't know how it happened, but basically this light, this animal, this creature came out of the crystal. And he filmed it. And he basically was saying, how life comes out of crystals. And it's just, what is that? It's just amazing, The guy was not, he showed us it was not lying. I don't know.
I think I just got an okay from one of the producers. So let me see if these links are up. But if they're not, let me see here. Let me go down. Yeah. Okay, so the links are up. If you go just below the gallery, you have to refresh your screen at jimmychurchradio.com. But if you scroll to the bottom, the 2 YouTube links are there. Of course, don't go there now. The links are there. Don't go there now. Go there after the show. And then once you go there, you'll be on her YouTube channel, and you can go through and certainly go check out the Gary McKinnon interview and the John Lear, my 2 favorites. And, your Graham Hancock, by the way, stellar. All of the Sean David Morton, all the SDM stuff, pretty good. And you can tell that you two are friends. That's all I can say. You can tell in that video, or in all of them. Also the radio stuff too. I've listened to all of it. But but the links are up. I just wanted to let you know. Okay, so let's talk about Bob Dean for a second before we get to this the Frenchtown rooftops, because I want to know exactly what is going on there. But I know. Let's talk about Bob Dean. Okay. How does, because the title of this is An Officer and a Gentleman. So obviously you respect Bob Dean. So do I. But how does he come across, again, in your guerrilla style of shooting stuff? You get to capture everybody's personality, and you can, like you were saying earlier, you can tell if somebody's telling the truth because everything is captured there. And you can see every side of somebody's personality in the way that you shoot stuff, and which is why you have the fan base that you do. Let's talk about Bob Dean. What's his story, and how do you feel?
Okay, first of all, let me say that I think he just turned 85 a week ago, and I saw him. I just visited him, and it was a thrill to see him. I hadn't seen him in what appears to be maybe a year, maybe 2 years, can't remember. But and he is not doing so well. He's really getting up there in age. He doesn't go out so much in public as he did at all. He's not allowed to speak at conferences and so on. He's just he's really a special soul in my view, and then he's a leader in this sector. And so I'm a huge fan of his. But I can also tell you that as he's gotten older, some of his memory is not as good. So maybe he doesn't remember everything. But these videos that you see were the early days. He was in great shape, and he knew exactly what he was talking about. He went on stage in one of these. I don't know if you have this picture here. I don't think I see it. Anyway, one of the pictures of Bob Dean that I sent you was him at the Exopolitics conference, and he's there with Henry Deacon, who also is known as Arthur Neumann, on the far right. So it's the 4th photograph on the right.
Yeah, we have the Exopolitics summit. It's right here in Barcelona, the one in Barcelona. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Right. There it is. Okay. So, but bottom line is, he's also incredibly eloquent, and just a gentleman, is an understatement. I mean, he really can. He's very dapper. He's very, he's just very elegant and a lovely man, well spoken and very intelligent. He's a rebel, and he was in the military. He's part of the Old Boys Network. There's no doubt about that. He's guarding certain information to keep his family safe, and he will do that until he passes over. So. I've been called by people who want to interview him and get his, last statements and all this kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I can guarantee you he's not going to reveal this stuff if it endangers his family. And that's the bottom line. He knows the truth. I can tell you that.
Where's the information going to go when, is there going to be some type of, are you going to be there, deathbed confession, and find out where where his vault is, where the information is stored?
No, I don't, probably not. I mean, I maybe, but his wife, Marcia Schaefer is with him all the time, and I'm sure she will hear and know whatever it is he knows. And correspondingly, he's going to try to keep her alive for as long as possible.
Wow. It's kind of like with Dean, it's kind of like James McDonald. And in that, when James McDonald died, however you want to consider his death, however he passed, but the information went with him, and we may never know. And in the case with Bob Dean, I agree with you, but when I hope that there's a way to eventually share that information. And it's the truth. Okay, let's go up to the French rooftops. What are we looking at here?
Well, it's a small French town on the outskirts of Lake Geneva, and Bill and I were there back in the early days. I'm trying to remember exactly when, probably 2008 or 9, maybe even later. But so that was a UFO sighting that I had late at night, and I discuss it on what happened is, I was sleeping or supposed to be sleeping, and he was out at some kind of meeting that he goes to, and it was around 2 a.m, and I guess I was awake and restless or whatever. And I kind of got out of the bed, and I just was propelled out the door in this little French town. And it was a kind of French town that was built in, I guess, I don't know, the 18 or 1900s. And you can see maybe by the architecture briefly in that photo. I mean, it was very old fashioned. It had cobblestones in the whole 9 yards. And we were staying in what was like this little storefront apartment that Bill rented for a short time, which was like a closet, with lots of kittens, because the upstairs people owned it, and they had a cat with lots of kittens. And anyway, I woke up in the middle of the night. I just was propelled to go outside and look at the sky. I don't even know why. I just felt like going outside. Maybe, I was just moved to do that. And as I looked up, I saw this vehicle, and it was huge. It had lights on it, on just the corners. And it was triangular. It was thicker than your normal triangle. So sometimes you see these triangles in UFO photos that look very sleek and very that kind of. It wasn't like that. It was more thick. And actually, there is a photo or a drawing that Michael Schratt has in one of his. He's a UFO aerospace historian. I've done many interviews with him. And one of the photos does show a very similar kind of triangle, but it's kind of thick around the sides.
Okay. Carrie.
Yes?
Are you saying that in this photograph, that's the craft or the side of it?
No, I'm saying that when I was staring, that was a photograph shot after the happening. So I didn't have a camera.
Oh.
I didn't have anything in hand because I didn't know I was going to see something. I just walked outside with nothing in my hand. But I was transfixed by this vehicle going very slowly over this little French town. And because it was framed on either side by these, the wall-to-wall, how a little town street is, wall-to-wall buildings.
Right.
My vantage point was very specific of the sky. And so that's what you see there. It was literally filling a good part of that area, coming over in a sort of angular direction over that town. And then it slowly cloaked itself. And it was very bizarre. Later, we heard from people who lived in Lake Geneva that they see these things all the time. And that they come, that they basically are part of the installation, which is part of the, whatchamacallit, it's not a linear accelerator. It's, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Did it make a sound?
Silent. Completely silent.
And when it cloaked itself, could you see through it then and see the stars behind it? Or,
No.
So it was still a solid object?
Yes.
Wow.
It started going to black, and it didn't do it fast. In fact, you'll see me in the interview say that I thought See, I thought it was one of ours. But I also did have a vision. I know it's going to sound bizarre, but I think I say this in the interview, that Bill did with me. Because what happened is Bill came back. I'd just seen it. He came back like within a half hour. He insisted on putting me on film. I had no makeup on. I hated the whole thing. But he filmed me and interviewed me right then and there. And so what I saw or think I felt was that it was one of ours, that it had reptilians and humans inside. And that's what I saw, in my sort of mind's eye, if you will. Yeah, it was the biggest UFO sighting I've ever, and the closest, I guess you might say.
Let's go to Renegade. Renegade. Okay, so this is second from the left in the second row of the gallery. There's Gordon. Okay, tell why would you include this?
Okay, well, first of all, Gordon died, and he went into the hospital for some small, insignificant thing, like, I forget, something was wrong with his toe or something
toothache.
Absurd.
Right.
And ended up they, as far as I'm concerned, they killed him. He was offed. So he never left the hospital. So, but the bottom line is, and he is a very colorful character, and that's one of my favorite interviews just on a personal level, because it was shot in, I colorized it in black and white because I thought he seemed like one of those 1940s kind of gangster guys.
Yeah.
And it suited him really well, and it looked very cool. And I just on a creative level, I had a lot of fun with that as a filmmaker. But the Kennedy assassination in the beginning, I wasn't able to grab. I didn't have time to get a good thing of the Zapruder film. That was what I was going to put on there, because the bottom line is that I feel that there was a coup in America when Kennedy was taken out, and that was when in essence, the Bush cabal and the whole, military-industrial takeover of the United States took place then and there. And from then on, we were not even a semblance of a free country. And I know that there's a lot of sort of reasons to think that maybe we never were a free country, but I can assure you that things changed drastically after that, as most people know already. And the people that are in charge, this country has gone downhill ever since.
Well, I have said a lot, not only to my friends, but I've probably said it a few times on this program. And you've been around the world. I have. My wife has. My family, and so forth. But when you say something like that, and I hear you, Carrie, I hear you. But the one thing that we do thoroughly enjoy here is freedom. You and I are sitting right here on the radio, speaking very, very candidly and very, very free. This is not North Korea, okay? As much as we are clamped down on, and I talk about it all the time, the invasion of our private lives now is there on every level. Whether you're going to an arena to go see a concert, or going to school, or trying to get on an airplane, or where you are constantly invaded now. Our phones, we now know that everything we text and everything that we say is now recorded up in Utah by the NSA. They're not making any secrets about any of that. But we are still entitled a lot of freedom here in this country. We really are. And so when you leave the United States, like you just said, you talk about your trips to Russia, but when you leave the United States and then look back into it, as bad as it is here and as bad as it has gotten, we're still pretty friggin' free.
Yes and no. I mean, I appreciate that. I think a lot of the so-called freedoms that Americans have is propaganda. I think it's something of a mental illusion, because people that work till 9 to 5 to pay the rent and pay the bills and have watch a couple of hours of TV and then have to go to sleep. I mean, is that a life? This is what we've got on this planet. A tremendous amount of mind control going on. I've got witnesses that are killed on happening fairly. I don't want to say regular basis, but I can name certain witnesses that have been killed. And there are people being shut up every day. People that are being electronically harassed. People that are being, fired from jobs for speaking out. People like John Mack, a Harvard professor.
Right.
I mean, if you want to call that freedom, you may go right ahead and do so. But in my view, something changed after the death of Kennedy, and I do believe that there was an effort from both John and Robert Kennedy to change this country, to make it into a place where it had a lot more true freedom than it does today. There is a tremendous amount of mind control going on here and in Britain, and I spend a lot of time in Britain. It's fascinating to me. I've spent a lot of time in Europe. I've lived in Europe for a while, in Switzerland, as a matter of fact. And I can say that I've noticed the amount of control over humans in general on the planet, and it's phenomenal. I think you don't even realize how unfree you really are until you stop and look. You have to examine every level of the way we live and stop and think about it. And then also, the minute you try stepping out. Now, you, Jimmy Church.
Yes.
I'm going to say, is that really your name?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know how long you've been on this sector, okay? But I can tell you that there are people out there that are working really, really hard to counter people like me. And I can tell you that, the UFO Congress that I just attended, massive mind control going on there. On top of it, I can tell you that Timothy Good was on stage telling people in a very calm voice, who is in touch with good friends with people in the British monarchy, high-level military people in the British military. And I can tell you that he was cut off halfway through his presentation. They took him down, okay? And I can also tell you that he was saying, right prior to when he was cut off, that there were at least 2 ET races that we were, in essence, at war with. And that they didn't like what they heard, and so they took him off stage.
Who took him off stage? How was he cut off?
They shut him down. They shut off his presentation. He couldn't finish it. A full halfway through his presentation, he was shut down.
By who?
Well,
by
who can
whom?
say? Well, who? Let's say who. I can tell you there were certain people in the audience that would have helped orchestrate it, but how it was done electronically. In essence, he had no presentation left. He folded his tent and walked off the stage.
But who was in? Was it done with mind control, or when you say electronically,
no, the computer no longer worked. He couldn't get the computer that he had his presentation on a stick.
Right.
The computer worked for everyone else all the way through. It's just like you and I were just thrown off the air.
Sure.
That was like a warning.
Sure.
This is the kind of thing that goes on. Ask Timothy Good if you don't believe me.
Right. Well, I said a couple of weeks ago on the show, or maybe it was last week, but that when I did my sports show, which I did for 5 years leading up to this, I had 0 problems. 0. When I say 0, I mean negative 0. Never an issue. Email, phones, video, rendering, internet, interfacing, telephone call. Never a problem, ever. No blue screens, nothing. With this show, now it is a challenge all day long. I never know what's going to happen next. It's crazy. It's crazy. And for somebody like me, I have a very rational mind. I'm a very black and white guy. There is a reason for everything. You can kind of just figure stuff out. But I lately, the last few, it's just perplexed. It's absolutely, it's crazy. It really is.
Absolutely.
I just never know what's going to happen around the next corner.
And you know what, Jimmy? I really wish for you okay, that you and your family stay safe in this process because you're coming into the big time, and you're stepping in here for Art Bell, right?
Yep.
And I mean, he is the guy. Okay,
Yep.
He's the main guy in this sector on the radio, et cetera, et cetera. And he's been hit in 6 million different ways,
Yes,
right?
he has. Absolutely.
All right. So you know what I'm talking about here. Call it freedom if you want. That's not what I call freedom.
Well, this is what I'm saying. When as a young adult, I was 14, 15, 16 years old, and I lived in Panama, in Central America, in the Canal Zone. And when I was down there, I went from Indianapolis one day to Central America the next, to a dictatorship, okay, under a country under martial law. And this was even before Noriega was in charge. There was another dictator at that time. His name was Omar Torrijos. And when you see a country that's living under martial law, under a dictatorship, trust me on this, when every police officer is carrying a machine gun and they can arrest you at any moment under martial law for any reason, here in the United States, you can thumb your nose at a cop if you so wish, and in most cases,
bottom line, Jimmy, if you listen to if you look at the Patriot Act, they can now take you in for anything.
Yes, that is now absolutely that, but that's not what
I rest my case.
Yes,
that's now.
But what I'm saying is this: in this country, you have the ability to go to school if you want. You have the ability to go to elected office if you want, or not. You have the right to not work as well as work. You are able to make decisions for yourself. And in other countries, you cannot. If you are born poor, you stay poor. You're not going to ever have a job. If you are born in a trash dump, you're going to live in that trash dump your entire life. Here, you can be homeless one week and then go to college the next. And those are the freedoms. That's part of what I'm talking about. And so, yes, I understand what the Patriot Act has done for us. I know. And I had said, it wasn't even the Patriot Act, Carrie. You can back up from there. What the big turn in this country actually happened with the Unabomber. When we were on the search for the Unabomber, that's when all those airline regulations came down, and they were searching for the Unabomber. They're looking for the Unabomber. And that's when suddenly, because we were all put in fear of Ted Kaczynski, we all gave up our personal rights for search and seizure on every air flight in the United States. And we didn't care about that. We gave up those This was way before 9/11. This is way before the Patriot Act.
Right, but it goes way before that. It goes way back to Egypt. We're talking about worldwide. We're not just talking about the United States. We're talking about a plot and a conspiracy that goes back all those years, even back as far as Atlantis.
Okay.
We're talking about a Nazi conspiracy that to take over the United States. It went from paperclip in the more recent past. I mean, we're talking about a reptilian control of the planet from many aspects. We are fighting a war. Listen to my Mark Richards interview. I went into his prison in Vacaville and interviewed him. I was the first journalist in 30 years to even talk to the guy face to face, spent 2 hours with him, peppering him with questions. That is a fascinating case. He and his father were part of the Navy. He's a captain in the Navy. He was part of a force that went into Dulce to rescue people that had been abducted, and we talked about that. Incredible stuff. I mean, look, let's just get down to it. What is going on here? These things you're talking about, they sound very nice and very happy, but the reality is, if you cross the line, they go after you, and they go after you in a big way. And if you're talking to ETs right now, they're also going after you because they want to know who you're talking to and what it's about, because they want to make sure that they know everything that we know out on the outside. So as a civilian, you don't have a whole lot of freedoms, and you may have the semblance of freedom. Your cell may be larger than, say, in a not, a Soviet country or one of those, the dictators. Look, let's face it, the dictators around the world have been put in place by the United States government. I mean, they're over in Ukraine right now, fooling with their system over there. They're doing it in Syria. I mean, the bottom line is the dictators, Mubarak in Egypt, he had that position because the United States kept him there all those years. And I spent time in Egypt. I got behind the scenes in Egypt and talked to the people really down and dirty. They couldn't speak out. They couldn't tell the truth. And then they hit the streets. Yes, they were infiltrated. Yes, they were provoked into doing it. It didn't take much.
Right.
And they're still doing it today. But the fact of the matter is the same people that run the United States, run England, are running the rest of the world. And they are putting dictators in place. And so those same countries that you go to are being financed by the U.S. They're being kept in place by the U.S. Noriega was just one of those people.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just the backyard of the U.S.
Well, and when you speak of it in those terms, and let's not mince words here, I'm assuming you're referring to the Illuminati. Let's cut to the chase. And is this a modern conspiracy, or is this something that countries have fallen and wars have been decided and waged for hundreds of years? Are you saying it's that same core group of people?
Yeah, unfortunately.
that has been deciding things.
Yeah, some groups, special groups of very high level bloodline, what they consider to be high level bloodlines that have been tracked through the centuries, who have been keeping an insider sort of hold on everything on the trajectory of the planet, and have become more and more powerful as time has gone on. They do have a counter. We do have very strong, good friends in high places that are also countering these moves by these organizations and people. But did you see my video at the Bilderberg event?
Yep. And
Okay,
I was just gonna go there, but and we can. Are they deciding? Are they deciding the obvious? Who is sitting in the White House? Who is the Prime Minister of Great Britain or Germany, or is Putin part of this in Russia? Is it because it's either all or nothing? That's
well. I mean,
it's not some countries. It's either all of them or not. And
it's called one world government. I mean, look. They're dealing with ET races, and different governments are dealing with different ET races. So when you get into a complex kind of web of control like that, where Mark Richards is telling me that the Raptors, and God knows most whistleblowers and most people out there don't even talk about this race called the Raptors. He's talking about them nonstop to me in the 2 hours that I spoke with him, as being aligned with the humans, not because they like humans, because they could turn around and eat you in a half a breath. But the fact is they've aligned themselves with us because we've got a common enemy, which is two races of reptilians. Not all reptilians are our enemy, but two very specific ones, of which the Bush cabal are the most obvious members. This is where we're going. So we're talking about China is got a race of beings, a couple of race of beings that they're interacting with. One in particular, one whistleblower tells me, has given them some special technology recently that has allowed them to supposedly be the ones to rule the one world order. Whether that happens, I hope it doesn't happen on my watch, but because I don't want to be part of a hive mind. But this is where things are going.
When, I'll just say this: Putin looks kind of reptilian-ish. When I look at it also, if we reach back, every great empire, Carrie, has fallen. And it doesn't matter if we're talking Persian or we're talking the Roman Empire or Portugal or Spain or Great Britain and the reaches around the world and the influence. Egypt, for example, as well. Greece. Everything has been cyclical and nothing lasts forever. So, where was that? Who was making those? Were the decision makers making decisions back then too in Egypt? Were they making those same decisions with the Roman Empire and also the Holy Roman Empire? And
absolutely. Have you seen what is that new film out about Pompeii? Showing the arm of Rome. United States is Rome for all intents and purposes. The Romans, I think to some degree that this is an illusion. History is basically part of the mind control. So you think that they're cyclical, but the bottom line is the Nazis didn't lose the war. They simply became part of the United States, Britain, the USSR, Russia in essence, and Argentina. They went underground. They joined the space program. They were already supported by Bush money. I know that, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about the Romans, in essence, never left. They never really went anywhere. We are the Romans. Some of us are from Rome. Some of us are from Greece. The Romans and the Greeks have always been at odds with each other, lifestyle, approach, etc. These things continue. We are the Egyptians. Obama is, a dead ringer as far as I'm concerned for Tutankhamun.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about something that started yesterday. We're talking about something that goes on. And again, Jordan Maxwell is an excellent resource in this material. You want to know about the Nazis' takeover of America? You read Jim Marrs.
Right.
You read Joseph Farrell. You can talk to Richard Hoagland. He knows all about the magicians that are running America, that are part of NASA and the secret space program. He won't tell you everything he knows because he wants to live.
What about, and we didn't touch upon this, and we've got a few minutes left, so let's try to get as much in on it as we can. But we didn't talk about MK Ultra. We didn't talk about the super soldiers. And we didn't talk about Preston either. And so let's maybe touch upon that and get as much in as we can. With your interview with him. Well, okay, but what is your take on it? Do you honestly feel in your heart of hearts that MK Ultra and the whole super soldier program and mind control, is this what you're referring to when you talk about the influence that is there and the giving up of our freedoms? Because that's my take on it. But is there something more to it?
Well, the bottom line is that there was a choice made by the secret government a long time ago that had to do with a path. You can either go the way of the angelic human, which is to allow us to evolve or re-evolve back to source in our own way, or you can do it by force and by takeover and by power over others, and you go the way of the robotic Superman, which is what the Super Soldier Project is all about. What they want to do is have it bigger, faster, and better, and they want to get there, and then they want to expand, manifest destiny into the stars. They want to take over other planets. They want to rule the other races out there. I mean, you can sympathize in the sense that you must understand that from their perspective, which is a military one, it's rule or be ruled by. And so if you're faced with that, that inevitability as a human, even though we are multidimensional, even though we are a composite of 12 races, tapping into those qualities that are embedded in our genome, so to speak, is not easy, and it takes time. It's a laborious process. The sort of mind control of the planet has been in place for so long that even the people that supposedly rule us can't break through all the time into their special powers, if you will. But I can tell you that the military people that I've been in touch with, from above black, almost without exception, are highly psychic. They're empathic. They are, they have qualities, and they've been augmented. Some of them have been augmented, like Duncan O'Finian. Mm-hmm. They have implants in their muscles, mm-hmm. implants, all over their bodies. Now some even regular humans walking around among us have a myriad of implants been put in them. They're being turned into, in fact, in the chemtrails, it is said that there's nano that's turning in humans into what is in essence a kind of quasi-robotic human, whether we like it or we don't. And that can be then ruled by an AI, can be motivated to do certain things by an AI, and can also be given, directives, so to speak. It's a huge picture.
Well, that's and that's exactly where I'm going right now. This I have yet to. We don't have somebody out there that to explain and tie it all together. And this is what I'm referring to. We have the Trilateral Commission. We have the Federal Reserve. We have the Bilderbergs. We have the Illuminati. We have, you can reach through and go to the Masons and the Templars, and you can tie all of these organizations or lay them all out there. But is there somebody? There has to be somebody that is at the top of that pyramid, so to speak, of that triangle. There's somebody that is the boss. Who is that? Number one, that's my first question to you. And two, if MK Ultra is what it is, and I believe that there is something there, but if it's there, is there an MK Ultra rep at the Bilderberg meeting? Is there a Bilderberg rep at the or is there a MK Ultra rep in the Federal Reserve? Is there an MK Ultra rep over in the Soviet Union? How is this all tied together, and who is the decision maker and who is pulling the strings?
Well, first of all, look, I don't know everything, but I can tell you that I've had sort of been at this long enough to have gleaned certain information. I can tell you that the group of Bilderberg, whatever you want to say, worldwide organizations, Trilateral Commission, behind the scenes, they could have other names, they could have other members. The bottom line is that they are working with ET groups, each of them, again. And on top of it, MK Ultra is just one of the sort of arms of what they do. I mean, MK Ultra is in the public domain and has been, I think, since the 1980s at least. It was operational during the 1960s. They were picking up homeless people in San Francisco and mind controlling them. Pete Peterson knows a huge amount about this and won't even tell you what he knows. I can tell you that there are other people that I know that also know some amazing stuff about that. Richard Allen Miller is another resource for this, but he won't tell you what he knows.
Right.
Soviet Union was heavily involved in this. China was heavily involved in it. Of course, Vietnam was heavily, the North Vietnamese. I mean, soldiers coming back will tell you, horror stories. And I don't know if you served in Vietnam.
No.
But you know what I'm saying. So this kind of stuff, this even came down probably from even before that. I mean, we're talking, in a sense, MK Ultra just simply comes out of information that comes from the occult, and it's understanding what it makes a human being tick and how to motivate them and how to manipulate them, in essence.
Well, and so this is what I'm saying, and this is what I'm suggesting. With the NWO, with the New World Order, and that concept, and we have certainly heard those words uttered by just about every politician today, on both sides of the, on both sides of the aisle. But MK Ultra is what it is and the New World Order is what it is, I am suggesting that China was communicating with us on that level. Russia was communicating with us. Certainly things were going on in Vietnam. But there has to be somebody out there that is pulling all of those strings. There has to be an interface. I doubt that it's done by committee, and that's what I'm suggesting. And
there are, Tavistock Institute is famous in Britain, for one thing. Rand Institute here. There's the Arlington Institute. There are various, think tanks that have been very involved in any kind of social programming for many, many years, and you can go back and research that. What this is probably comes from the ETs as well. I mean, we probably gained a lot of skills that we didn't have previously from the Greys, for example, because very unfortunately our military chose to make alliances with some very negative groups of Grey ETs. And their gray human hybrid program is very successful, and there are lots of children coming into the planet at this time that are fully half gray. This will be problematic, I believe, for the future of the planet. So we're really talking about a program that is just one arm of a huge, what I call the secret space program, which may have another name to someone else. I mean, the bottom line is we have bases on the moon and Mars. We have bases. Now we're going on to planets, moons of Saturn, I'm told, moons of Jupiter. We have a fleet of, Solar Warden, which is patrolling our solar system, looking at incoming and outcoming craft and planetoids, et cetera. And by the way, a lot of these races, even incoming races, will use planets to hide inside of. In other words, they turn them into spaceships. So these things that we call, meteors or comets or whatever, half the time they're just old-fashioned spaceships, really, just traveling slower than the normal spaceship. This is craziness, but this is what's going on.
Are we living in the Matrix?
Well, sure. I mean, there are levels of matrices, though. I mean, this is what's crazy. It's not just this matrix that we've shown in sort of the movie The Matrix, which is the basic matrix. But on top of it, you've got a matrix of what is in essence channeled stuff that people think they're getting new information. A lot of it is just, in essence, kind of like ET mind control on humans. Mm-hmm. Downloaded information that's just kind of canned, that makes it sort of travels around. You could visualize it in like a river of information that circulates around the earth. So there's a lot of stuff like that going on. Having a clear head, looking at everything, being a skeptic all the time, but at the same time not throwing anything out. I mean, I think that's the best way to approach it.
I want to thank you. It's been a brilliant 2.5 hours, and it seems like about 15 minutes. Aside from that bona fide intrusion from the outside. Now, and I want to let everybody know, we'll announce it over here, and Carrie's going to announce it too, but we're going to reverse roles here maybe next week or the week after, and she's going to drill me. And we will. I will go on her program. I'm looking forward to that. And again, I just want to thank you for coming on tonight. And for everybody out there that hasn't, I want you to. And I can't believe I let this almost get by me. What is the one? Give me. I want a 5-second answer. What's the one interview that you're most proud of? 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. There's one. There's only one. What is it?
I don't know. I really don't. I can't. I'm sorry. I could say Bob Dean, an officer and a gentleman, but I might say I just don't know. There's too much out there. There's just too much that I really am proud of, tell you the truth.
Okay, that's a fair answer for me. I'm still going with John Lear. I've watched that. I've watched so much Project Camelot so much. But I go back and I watch the Lear stuff. I'll jump to part 2 or part 3. I'll watch part 1. Kind of skip around. But you really got him to open up. And he this is the thing. That says a lot for John Lear, because he's a talker, and if you're on his good side, he's got a lot to say. But seriously, that's probably 4 hours worth of stuff with Lear, wasn't it? Yeah, it has to be.
We have at least 2 interviews, and I've gotten actually a couple interviews on the radio with him as well. So yes, there's a lot with Lear, and John Lear is brilliant, and he's a brilliant showman as well. He can tell a story like no one.
Oh, he is so good.
And he's like a character in a movie. He should be in a movie.
Well, that movie's got to be made. I mean, I'm sure it's in production right now. If it's not, it should be. So, and if they're listening right now, that's your blockbuster right there, John Lear. All right, I want to thank you for coming on. Let me get out of here and close out the show. But thank you for coming on. I'll talk to you over the weekend. Be safe out there and keep your eyes open. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you, Carrie. Thank you very much. Okay. Carrie Cassidy, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on. This is KJCR on the Dark Matter Radio Network. What a night that we have had here. Again, thank you for everybody listening, the emails, everything else. It was a very busy night. I apologize. I don't know what shut us down. Well, I know what shut us down, but it was crazy how that happened. And it was for things to go blank in the fashion that they did. It was like very selective. It was a bizarre thing to witness, and I didn't have video running, unfortunately, but and you might have understood. Anyway, okay, so tomorrow night is Kevin Randall tomorrow night. And I want to say really quick, tomorrow night I'm going to discuss with Kevin, he doesn't know it yet, Shag Harbor. Shag Harbor, I mentioned it briefly earlier tonight, but Shag Harbor is one of those examples here in North America of a genuine event, something that was documented, something that the government was involved with, both Canadian and the United States. There are plenty of official documents out there, but multiple eyewitnesses, local law enforcement, newspapers, television crews. And it's an event that for some reason has just gone away. And I truly feel we have Roswell. I get that. We have Kecksburg. I get that. RB-49. I get that. We have plenty of the Kingman, Arizona stuff, the Phoenix Lights. We have lots of great documented events, black and white events, with multiple witnesses, backup evidence. But Shag Harbor is one that I think it may be our best example. And tomorrow night we're going to cover that. And I tried to reach out again today to everybody up there in Canada, send out a bunch of emails. It is a really tough thing to get out there. And I don't understand why. But Kevin Randall knows more about that than just about anybody. And I cannot wait to get Dr. Randall on the show tomorrow night. So I want to look forward to the show tomorrow. Please dial in. Come on, get ready. Tomorrow night is Kevin Randall. With that, we are just about out of here. Let's roll the outro music and get this going. Thank you, everybody. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Special thanks to Keith Rowland, the Dark Matter Radio Network. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kumarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. The D is there to separate him from all the other Mark Kovars out there parading around the world. Music, you are listening to it right now, is Doug Aldrich. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network. I am your host, Jimmy Church. I'll see you tomorrow night. See ya.